But there were two massive shopping districts here, built specifically to serve the crowds around the train station. The problem? No residential neighborhoods nearby. Most of the customers were people passing through. What's the point of setting up shop here? Zhu Kaiyang asked, genuinely confused in his mind. If this were a military operation, it'd be a fatal strategic mistake. 0 real value. You're wrong. I guarantee the foot traffic here matches any downtown mall, Chen Cheng said with a grin, then proposed a bet. Lunch was on the loser. Fine. You're on. I want grilled fish today. Zhu Kaiyang was confident. This place was way too remote to compete with the city center, but the second they stepped inside the mall, he stopped cold. The sea of people made him wonder if Chen Cheng had scouted the place beforehand. I've never been here before. It's all analysis, Chen Cheng said casually, as if he were just reading traffic patterns and the surrounding environment. Plenty of cars around, most heading to the station or waiting for passengers, but lots of people also chose to kill time here instead of dealing with the long wait inside the overcrowded station. It made sense. Nothing extraordinary. Looks like I lost. Zhu Kaiyang shook his head. But there's one thing I don't get. Do travelers really have the leisure to shop here? Because this mall isn't for show. If its scale matches downtown, the traffic justifies it. They wouldn't have built this big without demand. Chen Cheng pointed at the buildings outside and told Zhu Kaiyang he was planning a major project here. He wasn't revealing details until everything was locked in. Where would the fun be in that? Don't tell me you're planning to open a hotel. Zhu Kaiyang shot him a skeptical look. He could already guess where Chen Cheng's mind was going. Bingo. Chen Cheng admitted it freely. If the model worked in Yuntai City, he'd franchise it nationwide, cover the whole country. That was his hotel strategy. Budget hotels for the urban crowd, not long-term apartments though. He explained it would be different from standard inns or motels, higher quality, same price range. Who wouldn't pick a newly renovated hotel like that? You make a good point. I'm interested. Zhu Kaiyang said he wanted in, no matter what. Though if Chen Cheng didn't give him an opening, he wouldn't push. Alright, don't be petty. I'll give you 10% of the shares, but you handle market development. Zhu Kaiyang let out a resigned sigh. He knew there was no free lunch. Chen Cheng was a businessman through and through. Fine. I'll handle the market for 10%, I'll take it. They ate grilled fish for lunch. $100 a fish. Filling enough. I really didn't expect prices near the station to match downtown, Zhu Kaiyang noted when the check came. Of course, actually, they're even higher. Chen Cheng wasn't exaggerating. Prices here were already set about 15% above downtown. That was exactly why he was going all in on this location. This was where he could win while everyone else is rushing to the suburbs. We're positioning ourselves right where it counts. Chen Cheng gave a faint smile. He'd seen this outcome coming from the start, no reason to dwell on it. Those dreaming of striking it rich were just wishful thinkers. His phone buzzed. Boss, we've got a problem in sales. Wang Khan's voice on the other end caught Chen Cheng off guard. One of Wang Khan's salesmen had created a disaster on a recent deal. He'd scraped a client's car. Normally, a simple paint touch-up would fix it, but somehow, this guy had managed to total the entire vehicle. The client's fury had nothing to do with the damage itself. It was the salesman's attitude that had pushed him over the edge. Even Wang Khan couldn't calm him down. Keep him there. I'm on my way. Chen Cheng didn't dodge responsibility. As the boss, he had to show up for something like this. He told the client he'd do everything possible to make it right. He assumed it was some ordinary car. When he arrived, he saw a wrecked Mercedes. Damn. You couldn't have picked a cheaper one? Chen Cheng sucked in a sharp breath. He looked at his silent subordinate and felt a headache coming on. You're his boss, right? He deliberately wrecked my car. Does his attitude seem acceptable to you? The client's voice was ice cold. The implication was clear. The salesman hadn't shown an ounce of sincerity. Acceptable or not doesn't matter now. How much? Chen Cheng did a rough mental calculation. Totaled meant a full loss. If the client went through insurance, Chen Cheng's payout would be lower, but since it was his employee's fault, insurance wasn't an option. 70,000. I bought this car 3 days ago. The client pulled the paperwork out of the glove box. The contract date was right there. No deception. Got it. Chen Cheng told Zhu Kaiyang to transfer the money immediately. Then he turned and fixed his gaze on the salesman. I just cleaned up your mess. Don't you have something to say? The man stood frozen. No apology. No explanation. I don't know what to say. You already paid. Chen Cheng stopped cold. He turned to the client. This man is fired as of now. I will personally cover all damages. The full 70,000 was transferred without a cent missing. Then he blacklisted the salesman in every system he had. Lifetime ban. You could help your people. You could even cover their losses, but you could not let them treat you like a fool. Brother Chen, are you sure you won't give him another chance? Wang Khan still wanted to plead the guy's case. He was a capable salesman. If he'd come clean today on his own, I wouldn't have said a word. Do I really need to spell out my position? Chen Cheng's tone was ice. He pulled out his phone and called Liao Yuan. Liao Yuan knew exactly why he was calling. Don't rush me, the bike's not finished. He was mid-install on the final part. I know it's not done. There's a totaled Mercedes here. See if any of the parts are useful. Before Chen Cheng could finish, Liao Yuan demanded the address. 50 minutes. Wait for me. He hung up. Getting from Yunju to Yuntai City in 50 minutes was nearly impossible. A car couldn't do it, let alone a motorcycle weaving through traffic. Chen Cheng barely had time to sit before his phone rang again. Liao Yuan was already on the outskirts of Yuntai. Did you fly here, kid? When a silver motorcycle screeched to a stop in front of him, Chen Cheng understood. The guy had basically flown, and he was fast. Chen Cheng, this is your bike. Liao Yuan tossed him a helmet, unstrapped his backpack, and started sorting through the parts on the ground. You said it wasn't put together yet. You just rode it here? Chen Cheng stared at him. Was this guy for real? Close enough. What matters is, there's some good stuff in there. Liao Yuan grinned and climbed into the wreck. The body was scrap, but the parts, he could use a ton of them, maybe enough to seriously boost the motorcycle's power. You couldn't just cobble that together then get to work and clean up this mess. Cost me 700 grand. Chen Cheng waved him off. No one else was around, so he and the others settled in with tea while Liao Yuan got busy. The man knew bikes, but he wasn't about to let Chen Cheng ride it yet. He yanked both wheels off and methodically tuned the other components with his tools. The engine's still good. I'll modify it for you. Liao Yuan wrestled the engine out of the car, then loaded every salvageable part onto a tow truck. Take it to the Yunju garage. Unload everything there. What the hell, kid? Do you have any idea what those parts cost me? Chen Cheng couldn't hold back. It felt like he was handing everything over on a silver platter. Of course I know, you want your bike to level up a few notches, then you let me handle it. Liao Yuan was already modding on the spot, basically swapping parts. The bike's original components were the same ones he'd scavenged from cars before, just not powerful enough. This 700 grand wreck was more than enough to upgrade a bike worth a few thousand. There'd be leftovers for a few more builds. 3 hours later, he clapped his hands and stood. All right, take a look. The motorcycle looked the same, but the engine sound had definitely changed. The engine and power are flawless. Only weak point is the intake and ignition. Liao Yuan gave his most official assessment. This bike could handle any rally race you throw at it. And a complete newbie like me could win. Chen Cheng laughed. That was a stretch. Hardware's one thing, but a champion on my bike, they wouldn't lose. That was Liao Yuan's confidence. He told Chen Cheng the other guy's modifications were trash, not even worth a second glance. Chen Cheng took the bike for a spin around Yuntai. He didn't push it, but he could feel the raw power. He'd ridden before, and this machine made every other bike look like scrap. Even those brand-name models costing hundreds of thousands couldn't touch this custom build. Liao Yuan, how much did this bike cost? Zhu Kaiyang had nothing better to do, and now he was curious. A few high-end sports sedans over the years, give or take. If I had a pure sports car engine, I could push the power even higher. Liao Yuan was honest. Every luxury car that rolled through his garage, he worked on himself. If the owner didn't want the parts, why wouldn't he take them? He'd pieced them together over years just to build one bike like this. You guys are insane. I don't understand rich people at all. Zhu Kaiyang waved a hand awkwardly. He'd thought about buying one for a few thousand, but forget it. He didn't even own a car. Chen Cheng eased the bike to a stop. That ride had been pure enjoyment. How does it feel? Liao Yuan asked, already reading the satisfaction on his face. Not bad, meets my expectations. Chen Cheng said he planned to expand into motorcycles later this year. If the numbers looked good, they'd start engine R&D. Liao Yuan's expression flickered. Really? He asked, almost nervous. Of course. When have I ever lied? Chen Cheng shrugged it off. The next second, Liao Yuan's eyes watered. He was fully crying, like someone had hit a nerve. I've waited years for this. Finally, someone sees my engine. Liao Yuan touched the engine casing with reverence. That engine was his soul, he told Chen Cheng, forged through trial and error. I can see that. We'll set up a professional automotive company in your name. Chen Cheng's real target wasn't motorcycles. It was cars. The bikes were just a side project. You had to have everything you needed to grab market share, and even things you didn't need yet. Yunju isn't the right place for growth. Get things packed up, find a way to move Liao Yuan's garage to the provincial capital. He made it clear this spot was temporary. To build his business model, everything had to be close to headquarters. One link stuck in the boonies, and momentum died. Got it. I'll have news for you by tomorrow. Zhu Kaiyang hurried off. He had plenty to do, calls to make, people to contact, locations to secure. Starting a new industry from scratch was nearly impossible. This wasn't like a crowded market where you could hype a product, shift the pressure, and blow up overnight. You couldn't just walk in with some cheap attack strategy, especially when your product didn't have any real flaws. The auto industry was a different beast. The major brands had hooked consumers not just on craftsmanship, but on core engineering that couldn't be faked. Someone once put it perfectly, why drop 70 grand on a car? With 4 rings, simple. It wasn't just the engine. It was the Quattro. Put the word out, start the buzz, tell every major manufacturer we're initiating a hostile acquisition. Chen Cheng announced he was offering $100 million to buy out Mercedes and BMW. You can't be serious. They're worth tens of billions. They won't even glance at $100 million offer. Wang Khan was already sweating. He figured they should spare themselves the embarrassment. The first step was always the hardest. Maybe keeping their heads down would actually get them somewhere. No, you release the statement. We are acquiring. Chen Cheng made sure his name hit the airwaves the second that factory paperwork was signed. What the hell? Who does this garbage company think they are? $800 million for Mercedes? What a joke. Overnight, Chen Cheng became the laughingstock of the auto industry, but that laughter pulled eyes toward his other businesses. Someone even put together a brochure of everything he owned, just to mock him. I don't even have to think about it. Tomorrow's headlines will destroy us. Wang Khan's face was tight with dread. He'd never believed this was a good idea. Let them laugh. We move forward with the plan. Tell every employee with connections, anyone who can reach these auto companies, to come talk to us about partnerships. The only condition was the $100 million acquisition offer. Whatever the outcome, Chen Cheng would absorb all the pressure. I honestly don't understand you anymore. Zhu Kaiyang looked completely baffled. He had no clue what Chen Cheng was doing with that $100 million. You don't need to know. That's my play. Within 2 weeks, when our new product launches, we'll make waves. That was Chen Cheng's real strategy. He wouldn't have to spend a single dollar to get all the exposure he needed. Exposure that wouldn't just make auto companies notice him, it would put his name in front of every gossip and analyst out there. I think I get what you're going for, but don't rush. Liao Yuan warned Chen Cheng that with their current skill level, modifying cars was manageable. Mass production was a completely different game. They didn't have a car factory. The so-called facility was just a repair shop, and no matter how impressive the modifications were, the base was still someone else's vehicle. Even a heavily reworked engine sat on a frame built by a major manufacturer. Then we acquire a local brand. Chen Cheng's approach was brutally direct. No factory. They'd buy want no specialists. He'd poach them at premium salaries. He'd raid other companies if necessary. The goal was to create a storm. That same relentless drive kept him grinding forward step by step. Everything unfolded exactly as he'd imagined. They hadn't bought Mercedes, but he rode that wave and surfed straight up. Now Chen Cheng had his own system in the food industry, and he was generating serious heat in the auto sector too. Business is about playing the game. If we can't build a brand, there's no point continuing. Chen Cheng laid it out bluntly. It was time to strike hard. Building a brand from scratch wasn't the real problem. The real issue was getting the machinery humming and the workers operating. So releasing that news had a second purpose: to attract partners. Acquisition was still the goal. As for who walked through the door, that was entirely up to them. Excuse me, is Mr. Chen in? A middle-aged man walked in slowly, clutching a leather briefcase. He seemed reserved, but you could tell he'd once had money. The luck just wasn't with him anymore. Have a seat. I'm Chen Cheng. Chen Cheng smiled and gestured toward the chair. The man's suit and briefcase were a few years out of style, worn, but they clearly belonged to someone who'd been a serious player back in the day. I'm the chairman of Liuling Motors. My name is Fang Xiaoming. It's a pleasure to meet you. Fang Xiaoming was polite. He'd come to talk business, and more importantly, to sell his factory. Liuling Motors was impressive a few years ago. They pioneered a whole new era of minivans. Back then, the cost and the quality were both top-notch. Chen Cheng wasn't exaggerating. Even with Liao Yuan standing right there, he'd say the same thing. You could buy a minivan for 30 grand, it would run 10 years, and the fuel consumption was ridiculously low. But the domestic market had shifted hard towards sedans. Minivans weren't trendy anymore. So you want me to buy you out? What's the price? Chen Cheng's interest was genuine. Not exactly to preserve the old brand. An acquisition would merge their system under his flag. In other words, expansion. 10 million. The entire factory, the brand, the distribution channels, all yours. 10 million wasn't much for a brand with that kind of footprint. It was pocket change, practically a steal. But the low number put Chen Cheng on alert. Mr. Fang, if you don't mind me asking, what happened? Logically, Liuling Motors wasn't mainstream anymore, but it still had a loyal customer base. It couldn't just vanish from the market. Out in the suburbs and rural areas, that Liuling minivan ran circles around any sedan. Personal reasons. And the factory isn't a joint stock company, so you won't have any headaches. Fang Xiaoming told him if he was serious, they could close the deal right now. Good. I'll transfer the 10 million. You brought the contract. Chen Cheng didn't hesitate. Whatever the brand was, it would give him a massive boost. 10 million for a factory and a brand name. No loss there. As luck would have it, by the time Zhu Kaiyang heard the news, Fang Xiaoming had already handed over the factory and disappeared. He'd done exactly what he promised. No loose ends. 10 million, we'd have to sell 200 cars just to break even. After costs, that's nearly 1,000 units. Have you lost your mind? Zhu Kaiyang had a point. Chen Cheng couldn't argue with his logic. I'm not crazy. I've run the numbers. This deal makes sense. If he focused only on brand clout and immediate revenue, it would be pointless. But if the goal was to relaunch his own factory and elevate the brand, the value exceeded 10 million. First off, Liuling runs on an independent system. Their workshops and production lines are fully mature. In this industry, they're top-tiered. No question. Liao Yuan's tone held no doubt. The only problem was they never broke into the passenger car market from the start. Their brand was built around low-end vehicles, specifically vans. I'd rather rebuild my own brand than use something like this. Chen Cheng's voice was quiet but firm. Zhu Kaiyang warned that if Chen Cheng aimed for the high-end market now, it'd be a waste of time. No one would buy before they could even clear the first hurdle. They'd be dead in the water. Chen Cheng, I'm telling you, this isn't a scare tactic. You've walked into a minefield. Chen Cheng didn't argue. He knew most people didn't believe he could pull off a car brand, but if Liao Yuan had the skills, that was enough. We can't use Liuling's chassis. We'll have to manufacture our own. Liao Yuan broke it down. Cost control had made the chassis too thin. Not enough structural integrity. The sheet metal was a problem too. If they forced those molds into a custom build, they might boost speed and performance, but the hardware would fail. More hassle than it was worth. They had to replace the entire production line. Here's the plan. We absorb the van line and keep producing it. I'll set up a new workshop from scratch for you to run. Chen Cheng told him the timeline didn't matter. What he wanted was for Liao Yuan to shoulder the pressure and develop their own engine. The engine was the heart of the car. It didn't have to be ultra-high-end. As long as it ran, that was enough. Alright, I'll do everything I can. Over the next few days, Chen Cheng pumped money into the factory. He was ready to push a shareholding structure. The factory demanded too much capital. The auto industry was a bottomless money pit. Without a cash injection, even successful R&D would mean nothing. How long will it take? Chen Cheng glanced at Liao Yuan. At least 3 months. I'll push to make it faster. Liao Yuan was bent over his sketches. He wasn't a classically trained designer, but his hand was as steady as Chen Cheng's. Watching him work, Chen Cheng felt 100 times more confident. Since we're going all in on this industry, what about designers and engineers? Zhu Kaiyang's voice carried a hint of resignation, but Chen Cheng's money was already spent. No taking it back. Poach them. Offer the highest salaries in the entire industry, but there's one condition: they have to join before the brand makes a name. Otherwise, I won't pay a cent. What? Zhu Kaiyang stared at him, stunned. If Chen Cheng were running Mercedes or another world-class brand, arrogance like that might fly that level. People didn't care about the money. They wanted the prestige, but Chen Cheng's brand didn't even exist yet. He'd only just acquired Liuling. Just follow my plan, there won't be any problems. Chen Cheng patted Zhu Kaiyang on the shoulder with total confidence. He told him he was flying to Yuzhou tomorrow to reclaim the market. They needed to prepare for the fourth quarter of 2005. Yuzhou had its own distinct commercial ecosystem. IT wasn't as large as Mingzhu, but it had pieces that interested Chen Cheng. If he could tap into the herbal tea industry there, it would save him a lot of effort. Old Jiang, Mr. Chen called. Is on the morning flight tomorrow. Sanzi rushed in with the news. Old Jiang nodded, satisfied. Chen Cheng's strategic plan was moving forward. That meant this place would be his first test site. When Chen Cheng arrived, Old Jiang took him straight to the street. We've finished replanning the commercial street. expanded the scale quite a bit. We changed the sections you didn't like. The entire block was closed off, waiting for the green light. Good. I'll have them send you the posters later. Start the promotion exactly the way I outlined and make sure the zones are clearly marked. That was crucial. The reason this commercial street in Yeoju had never reached its potential was simple. It was a mess. Clothing stores were mixed in with restaurants. Customers couldn't tell if they were supposed to shop or smell hot pot. Starting now, our mission is different. Time for me to back you up. Old Jiang smiled and gestured for Chen Cheng to sit. Someone brought over a cup of herbal tea. Honestly, I used to wonder if our herbal tea needed all that complicated stuff. Turns out it doesn't. Old Jiang told Chen Cheng that over the past week, he'd tested nearly 100 different formulas. He'd finally rearranged the ingredients to make it easier to store while keeping the fresh taste. He urged Chen Cheng to take a sip and say what still needed work. Without hesitation, Chen Cheng smiled and took a small drink. The aroma was subtle, but the taste wasn't off at all. It was rich and pure compared to before. It's a little sweeter but not exactly. Chen Cheng put the cup down. This kind of herbal tea won't come cheap. We can move forward with it. That's the reaction I was hoping for. Hearing you say that makes me genuinely happy. Just as they'd predicted, Old Jiang's herbal tea hit the market and started shaking things up immediately. It swept through the competition and became the top-selling herbal tea across the south, not just in Yeoju. Anywhere there was an audience, they pushed it hard. Southerners don't eat much hot pot, but I can bring my hot pot restaurants in here. Chen Cheng decided to make Yeoju's commercial street his first test site for a new business model. It's not just hot pot, fried chicken shops too, all of them. None will be missing. There's plenty of space. Old Jiang told Chen Cheng to pick his store locations. The whole street was his to choose from. In that case, I won't hold back. Chen Cheng rubbed his hands together with a grin. His next move was setting up his businesses. Renovations and planning would take half a month at most. Time was tight. Have you considered using Yeoju as your pilot city? Old Jiang had every reason to be happy. If Wang Ping'an chose Yeoju, the city wouldn't have to scramble for outside investment. Logic and loyalty both said win. I've considered it, Wang Ping'an said. Yeoju doesn't have many factories, but its business model is solid. I'm confident I can make it work. He was dead serious. It wasn't just the young consumers who mattered. Seasoned merchants and foreign investors cared about the backbone of the business. If he could turn this commercial street into a hit, Yeoju's growth would leave Mingju in the dust. It was only a matter of time before it became the top commercial city in the south. Then let's get moving. I'll reach out to some local restaurants and see who wants in. Old Jiang barely got the words out before Wang Ping'an shut him down. This was prime real estate. They couldn't start calling in favors. Let the businesses come on their own, and they could raise the bar for entry later. What would draw them in wasn't Old Jiang's personal connections, it was the undeniable quality of the location. Old Jiang nodded. I agree with Mr. Wang. We'll do it your way. Plenty of merchants had already taken notice the moment renovations began. They'd been baffled that anyone would sink money into Old Jiang's abandoned commercial strip. That bafflement turned to shock when they saw the finished product. Was this really the same street they'd seen a month ago? It had transformed completely. Hot pot. Do people in Yeoju even eat that? More than anything, they were confused. A hot pot restaurant claiming such a prime spot, it had no future, and putting a fried chicken joint on the corner felt like an insult. What they never expected was that the soft opening would be mobbed. I can see you're not surprised at all. Before this, 80% of Yeoju's merchants were betting against you. Old Jiang spent his days wandering around with a teacup, completely at ease. There was nothing to worry about. Everything was on track. He ate, drank, and strolled the commercial street like a man without a care. I'm not just running my own store, but I'm making sure every inch of this street reaches its full potential. Because in Yuzhou, Wang Ping'an was going to build his own commercial era. That afternoon, Feng Yang burst in carrying a briefcase. He told Wang Ping'an that a few foreigners were eating at the fried chicken shop and had asked to see him in person. They want to see me, so I just show up. Where's my pride in that? Wang Ping'an smiled but didn't agree, not until Feng Yang handed him their business cards. Hear that? Mr. Wang is busy, send them on their way. Old Jiang waved a dismissive hand. He didn't think much of foreigners in Yuzhou, probably just looking to stir up trouble. I'm afraid that won't work, Wang Ping'an said. We need to go take a look. He stood and hurried toward the fried chicken shop. The moment he walked in, he spotted the foreigners. They'd ordered a table full of fast food and were nearly finished. Hello, I'm Wang Ping'an, the owner. Wow, you're Wang Ping'an, nice to meet you. The lead foreigner grinned and motioned for him to sit. These weren't ordinary people. If not for their business cards, Wang Ping'an might have missed this opportunity entirely. Do you know why we're here? The man asked, still grinning. Honestly, no, but I'm pretty sure you didn't come for tea and small talk. Wang Ping'an laughed. They didn't stay at the fried chicken shop. Instead, they moved to old Jiang's tea house. What can I help you with, Mr. Ziegler? Wang Ping'an took the lead. He knew exactly who these industry giants were, what market they wanted to crack in China. Every angle was covered. I want to work with you. Cross-border trade. Ziegler explained that even though Wang Ping'an was still in the early stages, his momentum was undeniable. If he could pull off cross-border trade, his future had no ceiling. You're not wrong, but I started in food. I don't think I'm in a position to handle international trade with you all just yet. Wang Ping'an had been shipping product overseas via maritime routes, but the results were a drop in the bucket. He wasn't about to use that as his foundation. Going toe-to-toe with these people would be a real fight. In my country, export trade is critical. And you, Boss Wang, have extensive distribution channels here. Finding you saves us a mountain of headaches. Ziegler got straight to the point. If they worked with Wang Ping'an, they could turn a single distributor into a multi-channel supplier. In other words, they'd have Wang Ping'an do the heavy lifting while they reaped the rewards. No problem, but my terms are the same as yours. Let my products go global too. Wang Ping'an's smile was faint. He didn't elaborate, just emphasized that he wanted equal treatment. No, your products aren't ready for overseas markets. We're focused on hard industry. You're just food. Two completely different concepts. Another foreigner quickly waved a hand to shut Wang Ping'an down. He insisted that going global required high-end technology. To the very least, you had to carve out significant market share. Otherwise, they'd never risk their own reputation. Of course, all our products have massive overseas markets. No doubt about it. Classic condescension. Wang Ping'an could hear the reluctance dripping from that man's voice. So you want a free ride? I could lock all my distribution channels against you if I wanted to. Remember, I've got the Kirin Consortium behind me. I doubt you want this to turn into a fight that leaves everyone bleeding. Wang Ping'an had more than enough ways to handle this. Whatever they had, he could match. They couldn't beat him in a price war. And if they wanted to break into the domestic market, they'd need local contract manufacturing. Without production lines, shipping by sea or air would take forever. That was exactly why Wang Ping'an knew they wouldn't dare burn this bridge. Wang, don't be so extreme. Your culture values reciprocity. Let's discuss profits calmly. Ziegler stepped in to smooth things over. He really didn't want a falling out with Wang Ping'an. For one thing, here in Yuzhou, their turf, they couldn't afford to go head-to-head with him. Help me move my goods, and I'll give you 20% commission. I handle domestic shipping. You handle international. Too low. We want 60%. The same foreigner again. He wouldn't accept the 20% cut Wang Ping'an had offered. That number was practically an insult. Then there's nothing to discuss. Since you're not serious, I won't waste my time. Chen Cheng wasn't exactly eager to work with these people. He just didn't see the point in overthinking it. With foreign bosses like these, he had to do more than cooperate. He had to position himself exactly where it mattered most. That was the real issue. They needed his protection. Without Chen Cheng's foothold in the domestic market, they couldn't move forward at all. And that was precisely why he could afford to be reckless. If the roles were reversed, if he was the one desperate for an opening, he'd have to play nice, stay humble. I hope you'll watch your tone, Mr. Chen. Plenty of businessmen want to work with us. You're not our only option. The foreigner's words landed sharp, a clear warning. If Chen Cheng kept pushing, he'd lose them as partners entirely. No startup boss could afford that. That was the advantage of being foreign investors. A few years ago, I might have given you a straight answer, Chen Cheng said, a cold laugh slipping out. He shot the man a dismissive glance. But now, I'm honestly amazed you've got the nerve to show up with that attitude. That's a dangerous remark, Mr. Chen. I'd suggest you reconsider the value of our relationship. They couldn't sit still after that jab. Chen Cheng had slapped them across the face with his words. Anyone with a shred of sense would back off, so you get to take all the advantages. You want me to hand over every channel I have just to prove my sincerity? Then why don't you ask your own country to cut me some slack? Chen Cheng gave a faint smile. It was the 21st century. Economic reform had come and gone, and here they were, judging domestic businessmen from the bone. Short-sighted, ignorant. He'd already said enough. His expression barely mattered now. The man across from him couldn't muster a single rebuttal because Chen Cheng was right. They were here looking for market access, Mr. Chen. I think we've hit a misunderstanding, but cooperation is what really matters. These little issues don't count for much. Then he quickly added that he could open up foreign markets for Chen Cheng as long as Chen Cheng gave them prime spots on the commercial street in Guangzhou, and not just Guangzhou. Anywhere they wanted to invest, they'd need Chen Cheng's help. That's fine. I'm happy you're investing. But let me be clear up front. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, don't force it. Those spots weren't entirely up to him anyway. They'd need to invest serious capital to make it happen. Skip those steps, and even if he agreed, people would be stabbing him in the back. Don't worry, Mr. Chen. We won't make this hard for you. One of the bosses handed Chen Cheng a card. $1 million in cash. What's this? Chen Cheng raised an eyebrow. A token of our appreciation. First meeting. We hope you'll accept it. Something like that. Why wouldn't he take it? Chen Cheng wasn't some saint. He had bills to pay too, but he kept in mind that the foreign market was uncertain. To break into it, he couldn't get greedy. You show me respect, I'll show you the same. Follow me. He stood up and gestured for them to come along. Time to check out the commercial street. But first, he made a call to old Jiang. He told him to raise the prices on all the best spots they'd marked by 50%. Exactly half, Brother Chen. Isn't that too much? Those foreigners aren't stupid. Old Jiang whispered, pulling him aside. Nothing to worry about. Those foreign devils are dying to grab a piece of that commercial street. Chen Cheng didn't even blink. The price hike wasn't outrageous. They'd already had a mental budget in mind and no reason to panic. After walking the street, the foreign team quickly picked their spots. Just as Chen Cheng had predicted, they grabbed the 5 best locations. But when they saw the fried chicken shop and hot pot place at the entrance, they could only shake their heads. The truly prime spots were still locked up in Chen Cheng's hands, and they weren't about to fight him for them. So you're set on these 5? Chen Cheng asked. Yes, these 5. They fit perfectly with your restaurant business. We're going into the service industry here. The lead foreigner said. He explained that coffee was already a staple in their home country. Their plan was to open a chain of coffee shops, and maybe Western restaurants too. Interesting, worth a try, not a bad choice. Chen Cheng nodded. The deal was done. He didn't bother to mention that this location wouldn't do much for a coffee shop. It was simple. This was a commercial street, not a business district. Mass market services could pull in crowds, but coffee, that hybrid of fast and slow consumption, belonged in office areas where white-collar workers were everywhere. Coffee wasn't a necessity for locals anyway. Forget it. A breakfast stall selling soy milk would probably outperform them. Then here's to a successful partnership. The bosses left the street in high spirits. They'd settled the full payment. They'd be back tomorrow to sign the lease. We overcharged them by that much. What do we do about the rent for the other spots? Old Jiang rubbed his temples. Raise everything. No shortage of investors from Guangzhou. Chen Cheng sounded sure. Now that foreign businesses had moved in, he'd make the whole thing crystal clear. Make sure everyone saw the competition and the room to grow. That way, nobody would hesitate. Following Chen Cheng's lead, old Jiang started paving his own road to wealth. Not long after the foreigners left, the south and north parts of the city were buzzing. Foreign investment was common for that era. But foreign companies setting up brick-and-mortar service businesses in China, that was rare. Foreign brands had a mixed track record, especially in food. They hadn't found the right fit yet, but in the next few years, they'd only rise in value. That was a sure thing. Old Jiang, give us a discount. We're all Guangzhou businessmen here. Yeah, old Jiang. If it's too expensive, we won't be able to handle it. Whether it's expensive or not isn't the point. What matters is you like it. Old Jiang smiled faintly. Prime locations didn't wait for anyone, and if these men had no interest, there were a dozen others who did. Let's be clear, we're not hurting for buyers. Yeah, Market Street has empty lots right now. That won't last. Old Jiang didn't need to guess. Everything Wang Ping'an had predicted was already unfolding. Without that connection, he wouldn't have bothered thinking this far ahead. But old Jiang, we really can't swallow a price this high. The other bosses kept at it, chipping away for any discount they could get. Wang Ping'an's voice cut through, flat and final. There's nothing to discuss. Good locations don't wait. If the price doesn't work for you, go develop somewhere else. This kind of bullshit drove him up the wall. They were all businessmen. They'd already agreed to the rules the moment they decided to set up shop here. You agree, you pay, you don't haggle. This wasn't a flea market, so you're the one pulling the string. One of the bosses jabbed a finger at Wang Ping'an, convinced the price would never have climbed so high without him. Wang Ping'an gave a dismissive smile. I'd think twice before saying that. We're not friends. If we were, maybe I'd let it slide. He didn't take any of them seriously. To him, they were nothing but profit-sniffing vultures. No point offering them a friendly face. Then we'll just see about that. The ringleader shot back, eyes burning with pure hatred. Hold up. Wang Ping'an raised a hand. He wanted to know, was this one man's opinion, or did the rest feel the same? What, having second thoughts? They all figured Wang Ping'an was about to fold. They couldn't have been more wrong. We'll cross paths again. If all of you feel this way, then remember, don't ever come asking me for a favor. With that, Wang Ping'an flicked his hand in irritation, a clear sign to get out. The ones who got it, got it. The ones who didn't, no amount of talk would help. Wang, don't you think that attitude's a little harsh? Old Jiang looked worried. It felt like they were making enemies for no reason. What's harsh about it? Their money counts, but ours doesn't. In the old days, Wang Ping'an might have thrown them a bone, lowered the price to crush the competition. Now, not a chance. If he caved, everything he'd built would be wasted. He refused to let that happen. He wasn't giving these people a second shot. Sometimes that's just life. Miss it, and you don't get it back. Back at their offices, the furious bosses decided to band together and take Wang Ping'an down. They couldn't stomach how arrogant he'd become. I'd advise against it. Wang Ping'an isn't that simple. It was young Master Wu. He'd heard every detail of what had gone down in Island Coast and had returned for exactly this reason. Wang Ping'an's just some outsider businessman. Are you so terrified of him you've lost your nerve? The bosses sneered. They knew young Master Wu had been forced to flee to Love Island. That whole mess had made a loud enough scene. On top of that, Wang Ping'an had personally sent Wu's younger brother, Wu Dao, to prison. 2 strikes against him. Of course he was scared. Nothing unusual about a broken man. Save your venom. If I were really that scared, I wouldn't show my face at all. Young Master Wu snorted. But you big shots, letting an outsider lead you around by the nose. Aren't you embarrassed to be laughed at? Then young Master Wu laid out the plan, a price war. If Wang Ping'an opened a restaurant, they'd open one too. Fight him on every front. Poach his business. First step, send someone who hadn't shown their face yet to sign a lease contract. Easy. I've got plenty of guys. I'll send them. One of the bosses raised his hand, but he paused. Wasn't this just handing Wang Ping'an money by a different route? If we can destroy his 2 restaurants on Market Street, nothing stops us. Young Master Wu's smile was razor-thin. He asked the bosses, what mattered more, the rent, or driving Wang Ping'an off the street? Once he was gone in all but name, none of his businesses would survive. Rent alone wouldn't be enough. Fine. We'll do it your way. Every boss nodded in agreement. It was the perfect plan. The whole transaction went through without a hitch. Since everyone already knew the price, there was nothing to sweat. Old Jiang was thrilled when the contracts were signed without a single snag. Finally, someone was paying him. That lot is right next to your shop. What do you suppose they're thinking? Old Jiang couldn't help laughing. Any store trying to go head-to-head with Wang Ping'an was basically committing suicide. They didn't have the muscle. Other people did business. Wang Ping'an played a completely different game. Don't jinx it. I've got a feeling both those shops are here to compete with me. Wang Ping'an said the world didn't run on coincidence like that. Once a spot was taken, you rarely saw a nearly identical store slide in next door. Commercial Street had 2 of the same kind of shop shoulder to shoulder. It was a cardinal sin, bad for both parties. The only explanation was that these 2 stores were deliberately gunning for him. Then what do we do? Old Jiang's face clouded. If that was true, wouldn't Wang Ping'an's business just get swallowed whole? What can we do? Meet force with force. Besides, if we don't have confidence in our own product, why would any customer? That's a reasonable way to think, but the competition isn't exactly made of pushovers. Old Jiang pointed out that anyone in Island Coast with that kind of capital wasn't ordinary. Wang Ping'an wasn't worried. Let them have their fun for a little while. As long as he got off to a strong start, the rest would be smooth sailing. Within 2 weeks, he'd have both those stores' business under his banner. I'm going to make sure everyone understands, competing with me is not an option. Wang Ping'an's eyes went dark and deep. A faint, almost invisible smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. The competition had clearly come prepared. They were late to the game, but they were catching up to Wang Ping'an faster than anyone expected. Instead of painting the store, they slapped up wallpaper overnight. Wang Ping'an's timeline was 2 weeks. They started hauling in equipment in 3 days. Ventilation hoods and induction stoves rolled through the door, and promotional ads flooded every corner of the neighborhood. They had left him in the dust. Wang Ping'an never saw this coming. We moved that fast, one of the owners bragged. The group buzzed with excitement. Opportunities to one-up Wang Ping'an didn't come often, and this one was crucial. These small fry don't even deserve our full attention, another added. They had nothing to worry about now. Everything was falling into place perfectly. But General Manager Liu wasn't so cheerful. Something felt off. Wang Ping'an wouldn't just roll over. General Manager Liu was right. Not just Wang Ping'an, his team was feeling the hit, too. This wasn't fair. Competition.it was a dirty move designed to gut them from the ground up. Still, no one wanted to say it out loud. Everyone thought Wang Ping'an had been too slow. Wait, Wang Ping'an said calmly, their place will need a full renovation within 2 weeks. He didn't explain why. The rival shop owners knew their business. They had brought in old-school chefs from Western Sichuan to handcraft the hot pot broth. The aroma carried blocks away. Business was booming. The handmade process was labor-intensive, something machines couldn't replicate. Ridiculous. Customers come to eat, not to watch a cooking show. Who has time for that? Wang Ping'an laughed and didn't bother peeking inside, but watching the customers sweat through their meals made him tired. That was why he had outfitted his own hot pot restaurant with heavy-duty air conditioning units over 12 horsepower each. Real cooling power. Hot pot was supposed to be enjoyable, not an endurance test. Making customers uncomfortable was disrespectful, and Wang Ping'an would never do that. When do we open? Feng Yang shot him a look, still worried, until he caught a glimpse of the neighboring shop's interior and suddenly understood. Next Saturday. We'll wipe them out in a week. He didn't need to explain. Feng Yang already knew. You planned this. You let them dig their own grave. Can't say that. I didn't tell them to skip painting the walls or installing AC. Wang Ping'an waved a hand. Anyone would think the place next door was a steam bath. Every customer who walked out looked miserable. Uezhou's heat was brutal, and no AC made it unbearable. Now I get it. Competing with you is suicide. You don't play by the rules. Feng Yang could already see the hot pot shop's fate, but the fried chicken place was still a question mark. That one had its own style, a unique flavor. People are saying good things. I grabbed a box. Let's try it. Wang Qiong held out a bucket of fried chicken. Everyone reached in. Not bad, actually tastes a lot like Mr. Wang's recipe. Old Jiang frowned. He glanced at Wang Ping'an and caught him smiling. Wait, he realized something. Wang Ping'an nodded but kept quiet. Holy hell, that was terrifying. He should have known the moment he took a bite. The neighboring shop's supply chain, Wang Ping'an's operation. What are you hiding? I really can't figure you out anymore. Old Jiang was honest. Wang Ping'an puzzled him. You don't need to figure me out. Some things I keep to myself. Wang Ping'an said the end result was all that mattered, not the process, and it wasn't just the fried chicken. 90% of that whole fast food place came from his suppliers, meaning, after rent and overhead, those guys were basically working for him. Not everyone realizes that I don't slap my name on every business I own. A lot of those companies you don't associate with me. I've got a stake. That was his edge. Without it, he couldn't operate across so many markets. Now I see why you always win. You're just too damn good. Old Jiang's voice carried genuine admiration as he looked at Wang Ping'an. Don't overthink it. Our goal isn't to replace them. Wang Ping'an gave a faint smile. 1 or 2 players in each sector were enough. Besides, they were paying him rent. Why would he want them to fail? He just needed to funnel the foot traffic. When their revenue couldn't cover costs, they'd hit a dead end. Wages, utilities, food supplies, those add up. And rent in this neighborhood isn't cheap. You really think they'll break even? Feng Yang posed the question to old Jiang. He had already guessed Wang Ping'an's plan. Of course not. But business is booming right now. Why wouldn't they last 2 weeks? Old Jiang still didn't connect the dots. He was thinking too shallow. In 2 weeks, you'll see. Wang Ping'an started walking out. He had a shipment to pick up. By coincidence, it was beef cut in Macau, fresh, never frozen. Look at the quality. There's still blood on it. No processing. Jones pointed at the steaks on the counter. This wasn't cheap. No need to guess. The marbling was perfect. You could tell without touching it. Not cheap Australian grain-fed, not grass-fed. Jones gave him a quick lesson. The feed made all the difference in taste. Grain-fed had the best texture, more chew, higher price point, top choice for steak. Most hot pot beef rolls were grass-fed because it was cheaper. And of course, there's the processed stuff dirt cheap. You interested? Wang Ping'an shook his head. No, not that, but grain-fed, that he could use. In this day and age, we need to move upscale, keep everything at the street cart level, and we'll get left behind. Smith said the mainland was missing exactly that kind of environment. Sure, plenty of Western restaurants had planted flags here over the last century, but the kind of sophistication people were chasing now was different. The impact would be different, too. Since we're going high-end, we have to do what no one else is doing. Smith told Chen Cheng that people's expectations around food were sky-high these days. If they weren't, the entire market would have been wiped out by now, so the first priority was to flip their whole mentality. They weren't just running a business. They were here to fundamentally rewrite how people ate. That's the only way to hit real excellence. If that didn't land, there was no point being in this game at all. Simple as that. No need to over-explain. Anyone who got it. Anyone who didn't would just get annoyed if you pushed. If you were running this, what operating model would you choose? Chen Cheng smiled, just a little. He'd already backed a steakhouse chain. This was his second venture, but professional Western cuisine wasn't the same as a professional steakhouse. Domestically, most beef in this market was grass-fed soft, easy to chew. Grain-fed brought a completely different flavor profile. He knew the market needed time to catch up. If he couldn't reach that level, it would all go to waste. I get it now. This is all part of your strategy. Smith smiled. Chen Cheng could not be underestimated. If he hadn't dealt with him face to face, he probably would have been completely fooled. The man was too sharp. His concepts and ideas didn't match what people in the modern market expected at all. You're in the mainland now, but if you'd been overseas a few decades ago, you would have made a name for yourself by now. Smith wasn't exaggerating. Every move Chen Cheng made was built on the bones of the real economy. In other words, even without that kind of backing, Chen Cheng could still play the shell game and win. He felt lucky to have a partner like this. At the very least, he hadn't crossed him. If he'd pissed off someone that heavy, his life would have been miserable from here on out. Then we decided. No regrets. Let's get ready to franchise. Chen Cheng chose Guangdong as the pilot location, but not on some commercial strip. He went straight for the city center and the office district. 2 locations total. Initial investment estimate is $2 million. That price wasn't high. In fact, it was low. Real estate in the city center was expensive. With all the renovation and equipment on top, it was already a serious number. The main drain was importing every foreign element directly, which inevitably meant some wasted day tours. So Chen Cheng's advice to Smith was simple. Don't worry about cost. As long as the quality was rock solid, nothing else mattered. With you saying that, I'm all in. I'm putting up $1 million myself. $1 million is nothing. Remember, that $1 million is just for the storefronts. Chen Cheng smiled, faint. He never bothered keeping score. As long as we make money, I don't give a damn about anything else. Smith was straightforward. His only demand was profit. Profit meant a better life, and this was his first stop in the mainland. He had to get it right. How's that hot pot place doing now? Chen Cheng asked with a grin. No guesswork needed. They had to be scrambling by now. You called it. It's only day 3 and the wallpaper's already peeling, exactly like you said. Xiao Qiong was genuinely puzzled. He wanted to know how Chen Cheng had predicted it. It's simple, not really a guess. Hot pot runs at high temperatures. The steam keeps the wallpaper damp. A few cycles like that and the adhesive breaks down. Eventually, nothing sticks. I gave them 2 weeks, but they probably won't last one. Yeah, no kidding, this afternoon, a customer actually found something nasty in their food, made a huge scene, they had to pay him off just to settle it. Xiao Chong felt like running a business that badly wasn't even worth it, just embarrassing. Only guesses on our end, no point dwelling on it. When they tank, that's our moment to rise. Chen Cheng already had it mapped out. He'd spend the next stretch perfecting every detail. If you're doing hot pot, do it right. What was the point of some cold, minimalist aesthetic, red and fire matched people's mentality? Pair that with high-quality ingredients, and it'd be hard not to print money. At this point, no one can point fingers at us. They're the ones who blew a perfect hand. Chen Cheng shrugged. He'd already contacted a friend in Shanghai. They'd bring all the equipment tomorrow. Everything was locked and loaded except the final push. The next morning, Bai Chen arrived in Guangdong with his team. He greeted Chen Cheng with a smile. It's been a while. If you hadn't reached out, I probably wouldn't have bothered. Bai Chen looked around the storefront, clearly impressed. No question, it was a prime space, but the hot pot place next door was stealing the spotlight. He felt a sudden urge to just buy out the entire neighboring shop. Don't worry about them for now. They're temporary. Chen Cheng's tone told Bai Chen he wasn't concerned, but Bai Chen wasn't sold. He insisted on checking it out himself. Halfway through a single dish, he paid and walked out. Couldn't even choke down one bite. Now I get why you weren't worried. Is that even a hot pot restaurant? Bai Chen let out an exasperated sigh. Either the owner was a clueless newbie or a complete waste of space. Who runs a business like that? It was a joke. See it, don't say it. We've got the opening to build all the momentum we need. With Bai Chen on board, Chen Cheng had pretty much everything in place. Bai Chen was using his own logistics channels. Dozens of trucks were already unloading. The minute you called, I had my people start moving. Always prep your supplies before you march. Bai Chen preened a little, proud of himself. Whatever Chen Cheng wanted, he backed it unconditionally. Bai Chen hadn't come empty-handed. He'd brought serious capital. More than anything, he wanted to see if Chen Cheng had solid industries worth investing in. Only an idiot passes up easy money. I knew you wouldn't touch a bad deal. How's your hot pot business going? Chen Cheng hadn't been to Magic City yet, but the financial reports looked promising. 5 locations already. All expanding exactly the way you mapped out. We just started turning a profit this month. Bai Chen admitted he hadn't believed the model would work at first. The locations weren't near any residential areas, but the strategy had completely flipped the script. My brother used to hold all the cards. Now my hot pot spot makes in 1 month what his does in a quarter. How crazy is that? Crazy, but it's about to get a lot crazier. Chen Cheng and Bai Chen had already restructured the equity. Chen Cheng was the majority shareholder now. The brand identity stayed the same, but building real influence across the South wasn't going to be simple. What's your next move? I want to hear it. Chen Cheng smiled. He was genuinely curious about Bai Chen's thinking. The kid had an anime-inspired mentality. Sometimes his ideas didn't line up with reality. I'm planning to open 5 locations in Yuzhou. Bai Chen grinned, waiting for praise. Instead, he got shut down immediately. 5. Yuzhou won't work. Chen Cheng didn't sugarcoat it. He told Bai Chen to drop the idea. Yuzhou wasn't like other markets. In that environment, even 3 locations would be a struggle. Any more than that, and the whole point of the commercial strip would collapse. Point 2 was the sweet spot. Then they'd push outward. Point 1 per city. That was how you scaled the brand. Anything else was wasted motion. Wait, you mean we blanket the entire South? By Chen finally caught on, Chen Cheng's vision was on a different level. He'd been thinking way too small. Brother Chen, I didn't realize business was this hard. Frustration crept into his voice. He wanted more support from Chen Cheng. Bring the money, then we'll talk. Chen Cheng's tone stayed flat. Why else would he invest? Once the funds landed, he'd send Wang Khan and Zhu Kaiyang to lock down locations immediately. The operating model was already dialed in. The core elements were solid, they just needed local ingredients and sources, and the supply chain was ready. Alright. I've got 50 million. Bai Chen had the funds, not just his own. The entire Bai family's support was slowly shifting toward him. That was a win. It also let him feel what real power as a family head meant. Before, he wouldn't have even dreamed it had always seemed too far out of reach. 50 million, damn. Just how rich are you? When Daiping stood nearby, practically green with envy. He didn't have partners like that. Chen Cheng's connections ran deep. Most people would never get that lucky in a lifetime. Let's form a Yuju business association. We can push out in multiple directions. Build your own southern business network. Chen Cheng said this was the key. The future wouldn't belong to one person hoarding everything to get rich. You had to cooperate. A single road only led to a dead end. Elsewhere, a few other bosses were losing their minds. They'd been all excited to launch their hot pot places, barely got them open, and now faced a mess of problems. Xiao Zong, why are we bleeding like this? Is Chen Cheng behind it? They pinned every loss on Chen Cheng. Who else would dare cross them? This is your own doing. Keep running things like this, and you'll be dead in the ground before long. Xiao Zong didn't hold back. The most important thing in food service wasn't the storefront or the brand. It was quality. Today they found a piece of wire in the food. Tomorrow, it could be a dead customer. At that point, a few thousand yuan wouldn't settle anything. Fair point. But how was I supposed to know those workers were so useless? The boss waved it off. He'd already fired the employee. That's exactly why you bosses who sit around drinking tea and smoking all day need to pay attention. If you don't care about your own shops, do you expect Chen Cheng to do it for you? Xiao Zong laughed. His sarcasm cut deep. He wasn't about to let them off the hook. Fine. I get it. The bosses started reaching out to professional managers. No way they'd lower themselves to watch over a hot pot shop. They had status, reputation. What would that look like? Chen Cheng didn't think that way. Over the next few days, he stayed on site to oversee everything. Having Bai Chen there wasn't enough. Every member of management had to perfect every detail. In his words, handle the work up front, and you won't be cleaning up disasters later. Vac ducts and fire exits are all clear. There are no safety hazards right now. Uncle Jiang vouched for it. His walls weren't plywood, they were solid reinforced concrete. Good. Now start lining up the promotion. Chen Cheng contacted his advertising department and told them to draft a campaign immediately. They used Tencent's channels to blanket Mingju and Yuju with ads. Opening day, anyone who came to their hot pot place got 40% off. 40%. Are we even going to make money? Bai Chen froze. He hadn't expected Chen Cheng to push that hard. Day one is about foot traffic. Profit doesn't matter if the food's good, we keep the customers. Chen Cheng explained the logic. Day one was 40% off, day two, full price. He wanted to see how many people would be patient enough to come try them. Returning customers wouldn't need convincing. The hot pot joints next door were a joke by comparison. If people gave their product a shot and liked it, business would be steady. I ran the numbers. If every table is full tomorrow, we can pull in at least 10,000. Bai Chen handed over his spreadsheet. That estimate's useless. You're not factoring in table turnover. Quick eaters take 30 minutes, slow ones take an hour or two. Maybe 3. With all those rounds, revenue's going to be a lot higher than 10,000. A full week ahead of schedule. Even Chen Cheng hadn't expected this. He still skipped the firecrackers. The flower baskets at the entrance did all the talking. All service staff in uniform. If we're shorthand, we jump in ourselves. That was Chen Cheng. He'd planned every detail, but hell, they really were shorthand. Every single one of old Jiang's guys was running tables, and the restaurant still couldn't keep up. Too many people showed up at once. They're all waiting in line. Bai Chen offered a dry smile. This never happened under normal conditions. Even during a rush, orders came in waves so the kitchen could maintain pace. Now they were drowning. Send them to the kitchen to help. If they can't chop, they can wash, but heads up, quality control is everything. Chen Cheng wouldn't let anyone wing it. He was strict about the standards. Hope this doesn't turn into total chaos. Old Jiang shut his eyes tight, wincing at the heat radiating through the entire space. The AC was cranked as low as it would go, but with the hotpot burners going full blast, it barely made a dent. In just 1 hour, every table's full, and there are dozens waiting outside. Xiao Qiong's hand was cramping from tallying orders. He'd never seen a crowd like this. They were crushing the competition next door. The other hotpot place couldn't even compare. We're running at 40% off. Let's see what tomorrow brings when we switch to regular pricing. Chen Cheng's voice stayed calm. He didn't expect the same turnout tomorrow. If they could hold on to half the crowd, that would be enough. The hotpot joint would rise again. The lunch rush lasted 4 hours straight. At T3 in the afternoon, they still hadn't taken a break. They kept going until 3 in the morning before locking up. Through it all, everything was 40% off, except the drinks. I really didn't expect today's revenue to explode like this. Bai Chen looked shaken. He was genuinely impressed. I don't even need to check the numbers, and this was just at 40% off. Chen Cheng shrugged. We'll see when we open up tomorrow morning. Closing took forever. They had to clean every table and the floors. Even with single-use tablecloths, the grease built up fast. If a customer slipped and got hurt, they'd be liable. For most people, today was a good day, but for Xiaozong and his group, smiles were nowhere to be found. Damn Chen Cheng, how does he pull in that many customers? It's just 40% off. Yeah, spending in Guangzhou runs high, but that kind of discount is insane, basically rock bottom prices. Xiaozong's tone was dismissive. He told the other restaurant owners that in the food industry, you never devalue yourself like that. The result was obvious. Massive customer loss the next day. At 40% off. They were selling at a loss. The food costs alone were astronomical. And customers didn't care about that. They just wanted to snatch a deal. When the discount disappears tomorrow, he'll lose at least 2/3 of his customers. Xiaozong smirked. He already saw how Chen Cheng's story would end, and it would be ugly. Don't be so sure. Chen Cheng didn't get here by accident. Huang Ahu spoke up, warning Xiaozong not to underestimate him. He was already regretting siding against Chen Cheng. Then he stood and left the group without another word. The message was clear. He was switching sides. Huang Ahu, you son of a bitch. Xiaozong cursed. He'd never seen such a spineless turncoat. Forget him. Let's just fight back with our own price war. The other owners huddled together. At 30% off, they could still make a little profit. Any lower, and they'd have to cut the food portions. Fine. 30% off. Let's give it a shot. They knew Chen Cheng had momentum. Tomorrow, plenty of customers would still go to him, so their 30% off would be a clear contrast. As soon as people noticed, they'd switch. The next morning, Chen Cheng's team started cleaning early. That was the daily routine. All the ingredients moved from back storage to the prep station, strictly confidential, and no one saw a thing. Some of our dishes barely have an audience. Should we take them off the menu? Chen asked, pointing out that fried dough sticks only appealed to northerners. Southerners were tired of them, and the texture wasn't the same. No, keep them, they have a reason to be there. Chen Cheng believed in a consistent menu. Just because something wasn't selling right now didn't mean you hid it. Besides, his own crew loved fried dough sticks in hot pot. What's your prediction for today? Chen grinned at him. I'm betting we clear 100,000. Chen Cheng smiled. If we don't, I'll make up the difference myself. Deal. Let's see. 3 hours later, the restaurant was packed again. Not only that, the line stretched around the corner. Give them chairs. Chen Cheng barked orders at old Jiang's guys. They had to take care of the customers, even if they were waiting outside. Make them comfortable, tea, order numbers, and all. And send over some sunflower seeds and snacks. In the service industry, you had to make people feel welcomed. If you didn't, no one would stick with you. Damn it, our place only has 2 customers. One owner stared at Xiao Zong, on the verge of a breakdown. The contrast was brutal, and no matter how unrealistic he'd been, he hadn't expected this. I don't know, maybe your 30% off didn't catch on. Xiao Zong's face was blank. He'd already written off this hot pot restaurant as dead. Hey, come eat over here, we're 30% off. They're full price. Hearing that, every head turned toward the rival restaurant's entrance. The manager was openly poaching customers. That's not right, unfair competition like this, nobody's going to eat there. A young man shouted angrily, refusing to fall for it. You don't get it. They're out of seats here. We've got space and no waiting. The manager sneered and kept at it. Chen Cheng watched the whole thing from across the street. He knew they'd crack eventually. There are consequences for playing dirty. And this crew had hit a new low. Even Wang Ping'an wasn't about to give them an inch. We're just going to let the shop next door pull whatever they want. Old Jiang's voice shook with fury. He was ready to teach them a lesson. What else? Let them be. Wang Ping'an shrugged. He'd felt a flash of anger earlier, but now he saw clearly there was nothing here worth fighting over. Li Chang, you cut in. Focus on your own work. We don't need this. He'd learned a lot lately. He'd wanted to expand, but now he held back. There was no point. Keeping good people was the real key. Expand without enough staff, and the whole vibe falls apart. A subordinate reported to General Manager Liu. We thought he'd close early, but the old man stayed open all day. People were lining up at the door, happy to wait. The shareholders needed to reassess the situation. General Manager Liu gave a bitter laugh. You have to hand it to him. He thinks of angles we'd never see. A model like Wang Ping'an's couldn't be beaten, not unless all of Yuju united against him, and right now, they'd be lucky if he didn't join forces to crush them instead. That kid is no ordinary fish. Taking him down won't be easy. General Manager Liu let out a long sigh. He wanted a fast victory, but he had no way to get one. Enough talk. Let the hot pot place do its thing. If there's no result in 2 weeks, we might as well sell it. The truth was, neither their quality nor their management could match Wang Ping'an's. Even if he weren't the enemy, they'd still fail. Better to cut losses than drag it out. That night, after Wang Ping'an closed up, a crowd surrounded the entrance. All waitstaff from the neighboring shops, glaring at him. What's up, everyone? Some kind of misunderstanding? Wang Ping'an gave a faint smile. Behind him, his boys sauntered out. Old Jiang's godsons, raised together, now serving as Wang Ping'an's security. You've gone too far with you around, we're all going bankrupt. Young Master Wu spat the words, waving his men forward. Guys like Wang Ping'an didn't need a big show. It was after midnight anyway, their hot pot place was empty. Perfect timing. Then get on with it. I need to get to bed. Wang Ping'an sounded bored. He wasn't wasting words on these guys. He was tired, so a quick fight was best. If you're so eager to die, we'll oblige. The waitstaff launched themselves at him, unafraid of his reputation. They had no way back. You're dead, kid. But these weren't random thugs. Each was an elite fighter, handpicked by the bosses for exactly this kind of dirty work. Wang Feng snorted. Bringing weapons? He kicked one waiter flying several meters. The others didn't flinch. They wanted to cripple Wang Ping'an. Could they? No, he was completely fine. They couldn't even touch him. Tell your boss I don't care who he is. If he keeps coming at me, I'll make him wish he'd never been born. Wang Ping'an walked off, unstoppable, untroubled. He was no longer the lab rat anyone could push around. He'd truly risen, and a powerhouse like him wouldn't be bullied. Early the next morning, Wang Ping'an rushed out of Yuzhou, heading straight to Yuntai City's port. His first shipment had arrived. Just shipped in from Britain. The captain told us to deliver it to you first. The crew unloaded while trucks stood waiting. Load it all up. This is our first real score. He didn't ask the price. He knew the market well enough to be sure of a profit. These are the hottest trends from Britain right now. We paid a decent price. The sailors grinned. Everything was authentic imported goods and British specialties, swapped for foreign products. That's all I need. The rest I'm not worried about. Wang Ping'an smiled and tipped the sailors. This first favor would build future ties. They weren't his men. By the way, how's my own ship doing? He knew it had been at sea for days. Doing great. It's already off the east coast. The cargo is worth over 100 million. It's going to be a full haul. Good. I'll leave you to it. Wang Ping'an hopped into a truck and headed back to Yuntai City for his first local deal. The hottest item right now was a music recorder. A portable device that played tunes and could record your voice. A powerful combo of player and voice recorder, easy to carry, zero complaints. Nice. You bet. $500 each. Wang Ping'an grinned, naming his price. It was steep, but these were cutting-edge electronics. Prices would only go up. He was playing middleman now. That was the business. How many do you have? Wu Dao asked, curious. About 1,000. You got a channel? Wang Ping'an chuckled, knowing Wu Dao was full of ideas. I might. We can't sell these at the electronics mall. We have to use our own method. Chen Cheng had a plan. Zhu Kaiyang wasn't entirely sure what it was, but he knew one thing. Chen Cheng never made a losing deal. So whatever this plan was, it was already as good as done. I didn't just bring back equipment. I brought plenty of food and drinks too. Chen Cheng pulled a can from his pack and set it in front of Zhu Kaiyang. It's called cheese. Well, a kind of cheese. Smells pretty good. Good. Zhu Kaiyang leaned in. The smell hit him like a punch. He jerked back. Get that away from me. What the hell is that? I can barely breathe. Cheese had an intense, salty pungent aroma. It first arrived in China back in the last century, but mass production never took off. The manufacturing process wasn't refined enough, and most people couldn't afford it. I'll let you taste it later. You'll see. Chen Cheng kept it mysterious. He planned to use the cheese for baking bread. Wasting imported cheese on a fried chicken joint was foolish. Thousand Island dressing and mayo were enough for that. He was already thinking about opening a Western-style bakery. Not a cafe. A real bakery specializing in Western pastries, and no one had done that here yet. Birthday cakes, artisan breads, snacks. Why not crack that market wide open? Chen Cheng caught himself. His thinking had gone stale. Time to shake things up. Is that right? Zhu Kaiyang blinked. For the first time, He realized how big his blind spot had grown. He'd seen plenty in his day. How had he gotten this passive? We need fresh ideas. This isn't cutting it. We need to spend more time online, see what's popping. Chen Cheng laughed and called Liu Xiaolong. He wanted to know what new products were popping up. You timed that perfectly. I was starting to think you bugged my office. Liu Xiaolong's laugh boomed through the phone. He said Tencent had just landed a massive deal with a foreign partner, but they couldn't get directly involved, so I'm handing it to you. Take it and make it happen. He'd already sent the details. He wanted Chen Cheng to look them over carefully. Got it. Chen Cheng hung up and opened the message. It was all about commercial partnerships. A hardware order, specifically mice, keyboards, even monitors, they're all about to get upgraded. Latest intel says a bunch of electronics manufacturers want to sign with Tencent. Chen Cheng told Zhu Kaiyang it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The manufacturers wanted Tencent to slap their brand on the hardware, but Ma and Liu Xiaolong didn't like it. They believed internet companies should steer clear of physical products. Still, the money was too good to ignore. They needed a compromise. Here's what you do, Zhu Kaiyang said, his mind already spinning. Run a campaign. Turn those manufacturers into advertisers. Every Tencent game partners with one hardware brand. Match them up based on fit. That bypassed the hardware problem. The peripherals could be used as prizes to break into the market. I see where you're going there, so we can get a cut. Chen Cheng couldn't hide his grin. He could buy a brand and develop his own hardware line. The future was esports. It was only going up. Alright, I'm calling Thunderbug. Thunderbug was a struggling electronics company making mid to high-end gaming gear, decent stuff for gamers. But with zero marketing, they couldn't crack the domestic market. Money wasn't the issue. Their strategy was dead wrong. Lucky for Chen Cheng, Thunderbug's head was based right in Yuntai City. Saved him the travel. I'm Chen Cheng. I think you already know why I'm here. He smiled as he scanned the room full of executives. The only reason he'd walked through the door without trouble was Liu Xiaolong's authorization. Mr. Chen, I'm extremely curious. What kind of man are you? It was Enbide, Thunderbug's head of mainland operations. From what I hear, you're a businessman. That's right. I'm here to drop a fortune in your lap. Chen Cheng got straight to the point. He didn't look at many companies, but Thunderbug had caught his eye. Serious potential. With the right push, he could launch them straight into the mainland market. We can't just take your word for it. At the very least, you need to show us what you're capable of. Enbide gave a dismissive smirk. In his eyes, Chen Cheng was small time, the kind of player he had no patience for. I don't think I need you to assess my capabilities. Let me put it simply, I can open up the entire mainland market for Thunderbug. I want 30% of the shares. Chen Cheng crossed one leg over the other, leaned back, and gestured to an executive nearby. You've got half an hour, make some calls, check me out. If they said no, he'd walk. Plenty of foreign companies in Yuntai. He'd find a better fit. The room scrambled. Chen Cheng's confidence was off the charts. They had to believe he wasn't bluffing. Got it. Chen Cheng is a major Tencent shareholder, and he's the actual controller of Cine. The assistant handed over the intel. Enbide froze. Instantly, his entire demeanor shifted. He walked over and gave Chen Cheng a friendly pat on the shoulder. Mr. Chen, that was rude. My apologies. He even bowed. You had to hand it to him. These foreign bosses had pride like a seesaw. Forget it. 30% of the shares, and I'll give you a co-branding spot, Chen Cheng said flatly. He told Enbide the partnership was for just one game, and not even a popular one. Enbide stiffened. Was this guy trying to con him? A game nobody was playing? Trade 30% of his company for that? Insane. He shut it down immediately, voice hard. I'm not interested in continuing this partnership. Fine, but don't come crawling back to me later when that day comes, it won't be 30%. Wang Ping'an's voice was iced. He rose and walked out of Lei Chong without a backward glance. Feng Yang was already waiting by the door. The next meeting queued up. Sirue, Feng Yang said, if Lei Chong's venom, Sirue's the other poison in esports. That's not the point. The point is, Sirue actually wants a deal. Wang Ping'an smiled and motioned for Feng Yang to follow him inside. The reception was worlds different from what they'd gotten at Lei Chong. Nearly the entire Sirue management team stood waiting, staring at Wang Ping'an with open admiration. Mr. Wang, at last. I'm Senalina, Regional CEO for Sirue's mainland division. That title meant something. Only one person outranked her, Sirue's actual owner. As regional CEO, she held substantial equity. Skip the flattery. I just came from Lei Chong. His tone flattened the room. The air turned awkward in a heartbeat. What did Lei Chong offer you? Senalina asked, her business instincts cutting straight through. 30% equity to crack the mainland market. I said no. Wang Ping'an stated it offhand, making it crystal clear he couldn't care less about that 30%. Senalina's expression flickered, though she had no way to verify his claim. Lei Chong and Sirue were locked in a bitter feud. I'll give you 40%. What kind of return can you promise me in return? She explained that Sirue already had OEM factories across the mainland. Distribution brought in revenue, but the annual haul barely scraped $1 million. $1 million is nothing for a company Sirue's size. I don't blink at that number. With a stake large enough, Wang Ping'an said, he could rip the mainland market open and push annual revenue into the hundreds of millions. And he wasn't settling for just mainland equity. He wanted 40% of Sirue worldwide. Let me think about it. Senalina didn't shut him down. A flat rejection might carry consequences. She wasn't a fool. She needed to weigh the pros and cons. She excused herself, called headquarters, and laid out the entire situation. If Wang Ping'an can drive mainland revenue to 100 million, handing him 40% globally isn't a big sacrifice, the head office said. Management agreed, with one catch. Sirue's mainland division had to hit at least 100 million in revenue by the end of next quarter. Good, put me back through to him. Senalina hung up with a smile. She told Wang Ping'an that Sirue could meet all his terms, but there was a condition. What's the catch? Spit it out. Don't tell me you expect 100 million by next month. A faint grin touched his lips. Not next month. That's impossible. Headquarters is giving you 3 months. If you reach 100 million by the end of next quarter, you become a permanent shareholder. She explained that during those 3 months, he'd be entitled to a full share of Sirue's dividends, paid at year-end, of course, but if he missed the target, the dividends vanished. Fine, then watch me. Without a second thought, Wang Ping'an signed the agreement. He knew he had the skills to deliver. That's why he'd opted for a partnership instead of an acquisition. Acquisitions couldn't crack foreign markets. Sirue's production value was still sky high, and a group of Latin American investors held the controlling stake. Are you insane? 100 million in 1 quarter? Feng Yang pulled him aside, disbelief lowering his voice. 100 million, it's not impossible. I'm Wang Ping'an. That one line said more than any guarantee could. Besides, he already had a plan. Start building Sirue's own brand. The strategy, give the product away for free. The how depended on game activity. Later that evening, Wang Ping'an called General Manager Liu. Mr. Liu, it's done. You should have my proposal by now. I read it. You want Sirue to sponsor extreme speed racing? General Manager Liu sounded puzzled. The move felt risky. That's the idea, but we still need to do our homework. Wang Ping'an explained that this was Sirue's way in. Promotion and advertising costs were handled. As long as Tencent gave the green light, he had zero objections. Alright, I'll take responsibility for this. Do it your way. General Manager Liu laughed, saying he was satisfied with how things stood. If Wang Ping'an needed technical support, experts would be assigned on the spot. Not now. Let's lock this in first. Then Wang Ping'an turned to Senalina and asked for their top-of-the-line peripherals, keyboards, mice, headsets. He didn't explain why. Those were his secrets. If Extreme Speed Racing's user base cracked 20 million by year's end, he planned to flood money into a tournament. I'm jumping ahead 5 or 6 years. Tournaments are the original blueprint for esports. He told Feng Yang this was the only way to keep expanding. The esports industry was still an untouched gap in the global market. Even the most prestigious world gaming competition wouldn't show up for another 2 years. What Wang Ping'an was engineering now was ahead of its time. I finally see it. You're having Sirue be the direct sponsor, Feng Yang said, finally grasping the scale of the plan. A chessboard this massive, and Wang Ping'an had already solved it. Not just that. We'll need plenty of sponsors. Partnering with Sirue doesn't stop me from working with Lei Chong. Wang Ping'an was a free agent. No contract could shackle him. Besides, Sirue had only signed on for 1 game with Tencent. The rest of Tencent's titles were still wide open. As long as money poured in, Tencent wouldn't mind. And these brands would help those games go global. The prize money alone would trigger an esports wave across the world. Alright, we've been grinding all day. Let's go eat. Wang Ping'an walked out of the office with a smile. Tonight's dinner was arranged by Senalina, a full, authentic Chinese feast. The reasoning was simple. Wang Ping'an was their savior, their golden goose. They couldn't afford to offend him. Even if everyone there was used to Western food, they'd put on a show of respect. At the dinner table, Kane uncorked a bottle of top-shelf liquor himself and poured generously for everyone. Sincerity is rare in my line of work. So tonight, I'll show you mine. He tossed back the glass in one shot. The burn was there, but so was the message. He was leading by example because he wanted Wang Ping'an's attention. Everything in that room revolved around one man. Staying close to Wang Ping'an was the only real play. Which reminds me. You've got a new title now, Mr. Wang, Chief Executive of Shen Group's Pan-Asian Division. Kane delivered it like a royal decree. No ordinary executive could land a title like that. Wang Ping'an had been handed it as an exception, a mark of absolute trust. Yeah. A good thing. Wang Ping'an's smile was thin. Inside, he was cursing every syllable. He didn't want the title. He wanted control of the domestic market. Slapping Pan-Asian next to his name stretched his scope in a dozen directions he couldn't manage. His position was already complicated enough without some flashy honor making him a bigger target. Then let's toast. To the Pan-Asian economic entity. Kane rose, glass in the air, his smile polished. Everyone followed. Glasses emptied. A moment worth celebrating, at least on the surface. But Wang Ping'an caught the real signal buried underneath. These foreign interests were building an economic circle around the entire region. Not a simple business alliance. Something that could shift the economies of a dozen neighboring countries. Globalization in motion. And it meant Wang Ping'an would have room to move. He let out a quiet breath. Seems he'd misread. Kane, everyone had an agenda. It all came down to where you stood when the dust settled. Without this outcome, everything could have gone very differently. After dinner, Kane invited Wang Ping'an and Feng Yang back to his place. Not a hotel. A lavishly appointed villa. We're staying here for now. Tell me what you notice. He smiled, watching Wang Ping'an. The hints were laid out like breadcrumbs. He figured Wang Ping'an would pick up the trail easily. Strong Mediterranean feel, and a lot of toys. Wang Ping'an wasn't being sarcastic, Kane was showing off, and he knew it. The problem with displaying things you could buy with money was simple. Truly precious items never hit the market. Here's the point. All of this is about to enter the domestic market. We're a gaming hardware company. Yes, but we have channels for everything you see. Kane framed it as a golden window for rapid expansion. Unless your factories sit outside mainland China, then you'll bleed import duties. Wang Ping'an's words landed like a hammer. No exaggeration, just reality. If the factory was built on the mainland, all those headaches vanished, labor issues solved, production boosted. Foreign invested enterprises were practically encouraged to set up. Mr. Wang, if you have a better path, say the word. I'll listen. Kane's tone shifted. He stressed that this favor was personal, not corporate. Everything they were doing was strictly business, nothing else. I see. So this is your assignment. That made things simpler. Wang Ping'an never turned down a business deal. He turned the offer over in his mind, and no reason to refuse. But the real problem sat in Kane's business model. All these products thrown together like a flea market stalled. No mass production, no brand. Not even a proper OEM. Consumers aren't stupid, treat them like fools and you're done. Wang Ping'an told Kane plainly, with the current chaos, if he didn't get this right, he'd waste years. Then what do I do? You have to help me. Kane's voice cracked with strain. It's nothing, hold up your end, and I'll hold up mine. A dismissive smile flickered across Wang Ping'an's face. This was child's play. He could absorb every step into his own industrial park, act as the OEM, produce the same products. These were technologies he needed to learn anyway, and no rule said he couldn't enter the electronics market. Only Wang Ping'an would aim for the low end and start a price war. He wasn't going to wrestle with keyboards and peripherals that cost hundreds or thousands. The era of high volume with thin margins never went out of style. Everything we're building now serves the long game. I like the approach. Feng Yang nodded. They had no R&D channel of their own in just the past few days. He'd learned how many keyboard types existed. And let's be honest, in our country, there are only a handful of famous computer malls. The internet is exploding, but full coverage is still a ways off. Invest now, Feng said, and they'd ride the rising wave. In 2 years, computer equipment would be everywhere. Internet cafes are the key. Look at how many people pack into those places to game. That's our market. The wind was just starting to blow, Wang Ping'an said. He had to catch it. Low-end products would flood into internet cafes in bulk. Over a dozen cafes operated in this city alone. The model would spread nationwide. But none of those cafes belonged to a chain. If he built the chain and let others franchise, or ran it himself, the ceiling disappeared. With the internet trend, Tianji is going to explode. I'm glad I made my choice. At the same time, Wang Ping'an had handed Pingqing plenty of options. The internet age was brutal. He needed Pingqing to stand apart, distinct from Tianji. Different paths. Now was the moment to carve out a unique identity. Get Hude on the phone. Tell him to come see me in the city. Wang Ping'an was going to give Hude a real lesson, the kind that would unlock everything the man had. The moment the message landed, Hude boarded a train to the city. He didn't dare hesitate. A summons from Wang Ping'an, out of nowhere. It had to be urgent. Internet companies were sprouting up all over the country like mushrooms after a rain, each one scrambling to grab its piece of the market. They all had one thing in common. They were hoovering up every possible customer base. Anyone in the same orbit became a target. Sales teams have turned into customer service. Sales managers are now client representatives. What kind of era are we even in? Zhong Mang laughed. He had to admit, they'd caught a perfect wave. Exactly. This is where everything's headed. We don't get a choice, Chen Cheng said. This is the internet right now. The real age of the internet hasn't even started yet. But it was about to kick off soon. The internet was the hottest battlefield and everyone wanted a seat at the table. Too many hungry eyes were watching. All those small companies claiming to be in the online space could easily lock down massive customer bases overnight. Brick and mortar is getting hammered. The internet is going to swallow the old economy. 10 years ago, who would have believed that? Zhong Mang shook his head with a bitter smile. Their gaming business had already converted real currency into in-game coins. Those coins held genuine value, which meant their entire infrastructure could be commercialized without missing a beat. It's not just our gaming world, online e-commerce is coming too. Chen Cheng said he was building his reserves now. Whenever he spotted a solid opportunity, he'd invest directly. Why grind to build a company from scratch when he could let his money do the heavy lifting? Even the heavy hitters, not just Ma, but other chairmen, would show him some respect. It's not that I don't want to get rich. I'm just too lazy. That was Chen Cheng's signature line. He only ever wanted to be a major shareholder. An internet summit was held in Yuntai City, organized by a group of Southern power players. It pulled together the sharpest minds in tech. There was a time when most people barely understood what a computer was, let alone what the internet meant. But the world had shifted. Networks were woven into everything now. With the internet, we'll be able to take orders online and do fulfillment offline. That's still a ways off, but we'll need a whole lot of networking infrastructure first. Chen Cheng said he wasn't an operator, and he knew he couldn't chase that era on his own steam. Look at our electronics mall and the food delivery services. We won't need people running all over town at all, Zhu Kaiyang added. Once that model took hold, their workers could become customer service agents built around the client base. The logic was identical. The impact on the real world wouldn't be small. The fusion of electronics and the internet was going to take off like a rocket. Most of the people here are pitching for funding. They don't have enough angel investors. Zhong Mang knew the landscape. He had pinned one internet company and was ready to pull the trigger. Which one? Chen Cheng asked, curious. He hadn't dug into the backgrounds of the dozen or so companies at the summit yet. It's called Anida Technology. They've got about 100 employees, but their business plan is airtight. Zhong Mang handed over the proposal. He hoped Chen Cheng would take a close look. No need. We'll go with this one. We want 40% of the shares. Chen Cheng said he'd agree to whatever number they asked for, as long as the chairman was Jack. Jack? Zhong Mang paused. Come to think of it, the boss of that company really was named Jack. But that was his English name. He was from the mainland. In 2005, Anida was staring down its second funding round. They'd already posted some solid results, but the growth battle was brutal. They were basically hemorrhaging cash. Tencent had an edge in that department. They used game development channels to virtualize payments. Their user base stays small because the process is too complicated. That's exactly where Tencent falls short, Zhong Mang told him. Most people topped up at internet cafes or bought prepaid cards because those routes were faster. If anyone tried to set things up manually, the binding requirements were a nightmare. That's normal. That's how it'll have to work in the future without a bank card and an ID. Who's going to trust you with a payment? None of this surprised Chen Cheng. He started watching the summit presentations. Soon, Anida Technology's representative took the stage. Leading their team was Jack. Hello everyone, I'm Jack, CEO of Anida. Jack greeted the room with a polite nod and began laying out his vision and goals. I want to ask, how much are you looking for in the first round? It was Chen Cheng. He was genuinely curious how much capital Anida was short at that moment. We're planning to raise somewhere between 300 million and 500 million. Of course, the more, the better. Jack smiled faintly and stressed that this capital was their single most urgent need. I understand. But 3 to 500 million is a serious sum. A lot of the angel investors here might not be willing to give you that much, Zhong Mang couldn't resist pointing out. Jack was shooting for the moon. Chen Cheng stayed silent for a moment. He didn't know what percentage of Anida's valuation that money would buy. If the return was pathetic, throwing that much cash around made no sense. If someone can inject 500 million, they'll get 40% of the company. Jack laid it out as his final line. Anyone interested wouldn't hesitate. 500 million for only 40% of a tiny company. You think we're all stupid? Yeah, internet platforms are popping up like weeds. With that kind of money, we could launch a company 10 times better on our own. Voices of dissent rippled through the audience. Everyone agreed Jack's terms were unreasonable. That was the moment Chen Cheng stood up. A calm smile settled on his face. I'll take the deal. But throwing down the money was the easy part. He wanted to see something real first. He walked straight up, plucked Jack's proposal off the table, and walked out of the conference room without a word. He waited outside for maybe 5 or 6 minutes before Jack finally emerged. Sorry to keep you waiting, Mr. Chen. Jack had used those minutes to do his homework. Who was about to invest in him? He needed to know. No problem. I was waiting for you. Chen Cheng led Jack into a side conference room, and the two of them dove deep into the future of the internet. No one interrupted them. They talked for 5 hours straight. Honestly, I could keep going, Jack said, a look of deep satisfaction on his face. He'd already received the transfer from Chen Cheng. But Chen Cheng didn't have it easy. All that cash came from dumping shares and draining the company's operating funds. $500 million left a gaping hole in his accounts, and stalling wasn't an option. Not long after he offloaded the stock, Zhu Kaiyang called. Have you lost your mind? You know Huafeng's stock is untouchable right now, limit up every single day, and you're selling? I'm not crazy. I moved the money into something better, something that'll crush Huafeng's stock any day of the week. He said it with confidence, but Anida hadn't even gone public yet. Once it did, Chen Cheng planned to buy every share he could grab. A dark horse was rare. A reliable one was almost unheard of. I hope you know what you're doing. I don't want our entire workforce out on the street because of you. Zhu Kaiyang hung up, frustration simmering. Chen Cheng's recklessness genuinely shook him. 500 million had gutted Chen Cheng's reserves. For a startup, pushing that hard was almost suicidal. Jack's vision was straightforward. Build an online e-commerce platform and turn every brick-and-mortar store model into a logistics and delivery operation. We'll need a ton of partner companies just to connect the dots, plus our own database and escrow accounts. Jack let out a dry laugh as he said it. Money's actually the easy part. The real battle is the concept. Chen Cheng knew exactly where this was heading, so he kept guiding Jack. Pointing out the wrong turns ahead of time was essential. It would save months and accelerate consumer spending. I own a logistics company. We'll use it for dedicated delivery. Chen Cheng explained the difference between professional delivery and third-party shipping. A dedicated line built around service quality would earn real consumer trust. I get it. You want users to feel like they're actually shopping, not just clicking a button. Jack nodded, smiling. He and Chen Cheng connected in a way he'd never felt with any other partner. But it was more than user experience. E-commerce hadn't exploded yet, so they might as well go all in. Full commitment was the only play. It would keep them from wasting time on dead ends. That approach would protect their investment and fuel future growth. We'll do it your way. Your shares now match mine. You're the largest shareholder in Anida. Jack told him that his current stake would only increase in value down the line. Here's hoping. I really want to make this internet tech thing work. Chen Cheng moved fast. Right around then, logistics companies started consolidating everywhere. Suddenly a flood of delivery services popped up, all calling themselves express couriers. The rates are dirt cheap. Suppliers pay $3, individuals pay around $6. Wang Khan handed Chen Cheng the newspaper. He said it looked coordinated. No question about it, they were a direct threat to his logistics operation. It won't hit us hard. They're small time. If they can do express, we can do express. Chen Cheng called boss Huang immediately and ordered him to set up a separate express division dedicated to small packages. They'd charge a premium, of course. We'll be the fastest with the best service, delivery right to the door, right to your home. That was the only requirement. If the numbers worked, they could even explore air freight later, but costs were still too high for that. A conversation for another day. The rise of express delivery reconnected friends separated by distance, and that shoved the offline economy online at full speed. We save a fortune on transportation as long as it's not bulky industrial supplies, we just pack it and ship it express. Food wholesalers loved the model, but Chen Cheng's service was their first choice. It was fast, the packaging held up, and damaged shipments were never an issue. You really think our express service can beat all these new players? At least a dozen have launched. Zhu Kaiyang couldn't ignore the momentum. A monopoly looked impossible. We don't need a monopoly, and we couldn't get one even if we tried. Competition is necessary. Without it, we'd never stand out. Chen Cheng said fair competition would push them to the top fast. He planned to dominate both lanes, logistics and express delivery. Hearing that, Zhu Kaiyang knew the plan was solid. There was nothing to worry about. At the end of 2005, Huiyuan went public. Around the same time, import-export trade policies started shifting. Chen Cheng's port operations grew even more profitable. They streamlined mountains of red tape. Look at this. Stuff that used to be a nightmare is flowing in without a hitch. High-tech products were everywhere. Their phones were getting upgraded too. If nothing goes wrong, our shares are about to climb again. But it wasn't just the shares. Every industry Chen Cheng had invested in was turning around, and the recovery speed stunned everyone. It felt like a chain reaction. When the annual summary landed, he discovered his liquid capital had reached $1 billion. And that's on top of the real estate. That's how much firepower we have. Chen Cheng planned to dump his remaining stock the following month. Huafeng was due for a change too. Just as he'd predicted, that dark horse had finally run its course. Not because the capital markets were unwilling to give it another shot, it was simply that the moment had passed. We don't have much left. You see the situation we're in? Chen Cheng glanced at Zhu Kaiyang. Are you saying Huafeng can rise again on its physical assets? Zhu Kaiyang knew Chen Cheng never walked into a fight unprepared. Every move he made was radical and absolute. That's right. I've already acquired 50% of Huafeng's offline assets. I'm the actual controller now. Zhu Kaiyang stared at him. He had no idea when Chen Cheng had pulled that off. Checking the securities records, he saw that only small lot shares had been sold, nothing major. Impressive. End of the year's coming. Got any plans? Zhu Kaiyang smiled. He figured he could finally buy an apartment in the city, at least somewhere to rest instead of living out of the office. Already handled. Chen Cheng grinned and pulled out a set of keys from behind his back. Wait. How many properties did you buy? General Manager Liu stared at the keys in his hand, completely stunned. He'd never heard a word about Wang Ping'an buying real estate. Nothing showed up on the company books. Just some small investments. I backed a developer earlier this year, and these are all property deeds from contractor payments. Wang Ping'an smiled, easy and unbothered whether they came from contractors or not. The quality was solid. He'd walked through them himself. The development sat inside the industrial park, and business was already booming. Then I won't hold back. General Manager Liu grinned and reached for the keys, but his hand stopped halfway. Hold on. You're not just handing me free apartments. Spill it. What's the real play? He wasn't dumb. Wang Ping'an never did anything without a reason. New Year's is coming. We've got half a month until Spring Festival. It's time to host an annual company party. Wang Ping'an told him this was all part of the rewards plan. The 10 highest performing employees this year would each walk away with an apartment, and there were plenty more prizes. Where that came from? Nice, really nice. Everyone in the company is going to lose their minds over this. The party was mainly for his own company, Chen Group, but every subsidiary and investment project would send people too. Wang Ping'an gave them a choice. Take the apartment with full paperwork, move-in ready, or take the cash value instead. The market price in the industrial zone was around 700,000 either way. It was a serious chunk of money. When the annual party finally kicked off, somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 employees showed up. Wang Ping'an hadn't realized he had this many people working for him. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. If I'd known it was going to be this big, I would have booked a much larger venue. The hotel ballroom was the biggest in the city, but it was packed shoulder to shoulder, so Wang Ping'an made a last-minute call and moved the whole event to the city center sports stadium. Plenty of space there. Did you hear? The boss is supposed to give the sales department a huge shout-out. We crushed it this year. No doubt. Let me ask Boss Wang what the deal is, a sales rep said, grinning as he slid over to the man, but Boss Wang didn't look excited at all. The company has a ton of departments. Sales is on the front line, sure, but you never know when someone else will swoop in and steal the spotlight. Boss Wang told the team that whatever prize they got, they should convert it all to cash and split it evenly. Fair was fair. Under everyone's gaze, Wang Ping'an walked onto the stage, slow and steady, holding his daughter's hand. Today is a special day. As chairman of Chen Group, I planned this annual party myself. He smiled, lifted his daughter onto the podium, then glanced at his wife sitting in the audience. Most of you don't know this. Half a year ago, I was a dropout, stuck at home. That was the darkest moment of my life. I'll be honest with you. My family had sold everything we owned. The only thing left was one house. The money was gone. A lot of the older employees had been with Wang Ping'an from the very beginning. They knew the struggle firsthand. We started with a chicken farm in the middle of nowhere. From that, we built Wang Ping'an Food Factory. We made snacks to break into the township and city markets. We spent an entire month fighting for every single sale. Nobody believed in us back then, but look at us now. Our food factory isn't just #1 in the city. It's #1 in the province. We own a massive industrial park. As Wang Ping'an spoke, his voice thick with emotion, heads bowed all across the stadium, eyes glistened with unshed tears. I'm lucky. I met all of you, people willing to stick with me from the bottom all the way to this moment. He took a deep bow. The applause roared and wouldn't stop. This is our party. I've prepared a lot of prizes plus red envelopes. He explained the red envelopes and prizes didn't overlap. They'd be handed out based on performance rankings. First up, 30 apartments were handed out. The main prizes went to Dolph, General Manager Liu, and Boss Wang, the core management team. The rest were split between the sales and factory departments. As for phones, everyone who's been with the company 6 months or longer gets one. The remaining employees each received a red envelope with 1,000 yuan inside. Now I'll hand the MIC over to General Manager Liu. Wang Ping'an passed it to him. These were the people who had been with him since day one. He stepped off the stage, lifted his daughter onto his shoulders, and sat down with a satisfied grin. "Aren't you embarrassed? You're the chairman. You can't carry your daughter around like that." You quickly made the little girl climb down. It looked completely undignified. "Honey, I kept every promise I made to you. Are you satisfied now?" Wang Ping'an smiled, smug and proud, very satisfied, "but there's one thing I'm not happy about." Yu pouted. "He barely ever came home. Our daughter is still in school. You can't expect her to live alone." He reminded her the 3-year deadline still had 2.5 years left. He'd come home the moment everything was done. "Fine, but if you're lying to me, you're dead." She sank her teeth into his arm without a trace of mercy. The evening banquet was extravagant. Wang Ping'an had booked the entire Fujian building days in advance. Mohammed had to give him that favor. "Brother Wang, you're on top of the world. I'm honestly jealous." "Don't say that. Without your help, I never would have made it this far." Wang Ping'an gripped Mohammed's hand, gratitude flooding his chest. With friends like this, words weren't necessary. A look was enough. And it wasn't just Mohammed. Dongni had come back too. He was one of Wang Ping'an's people now. Who would have thought? We used to fight tooth and nail. Now look at us. All doing completely different things. Dongni laughed, the sound tinged with something bitter. He was the chairman of Pinching now. All the franchise and development work for Pinching restaurants rested on his shoulders. Wang Ping'an trusted his ability completely. "Yeah," Wang Ping'an said, "without those early days, we'd still be stuck in that food factory, never seeing daylight." There was a little regret but mostly relief. The party ran late. Wang Ping'an didn't try to rein in his daughter. The little girl was too excited to sit still. "All right, that's it for today. Everyone gets a day off according to the schedule." The rare break lifted a weight off Wang Ping'an's shoulders. He really hadn't had any time to enjoy life. Walking through the streets with his daughter, he became the center of attention without even trying. No explanation needed. He was the city's celebrity now. Chen Cheng's empire was booming, but he refused to coast. The food sector ran itself, steady money, no drama. That gave him room to play. Zhu Kaiyang dropped a data report on his desk before the sun was fully up. "Liao Yuan's the star right now. The engine he's building, it's creating real buzz." Coming back from the field never felt like a break. There were always more tasks, more loose ends to yank tight. "Tell Liao Yuan I want a finished engine, no custom mods. Whatever materials he needs, I'll source them." The old Wuling engine was a dead end. The cylinder gap alone made it night and day. You couldn't turn a minivan into a sports car, not with that hardware or that software. Liao Yuan just sighed when Chen Cheng called. "Chen, I can't hand you an engine right now. The one I've been modifying is too dialed in. I'd hate to let it go." That engine was built off a Mercedes cylinder block, tuned to the bleeding edge. It already pushed past entry-level sports car performance. Sure, he could wring more out of it, but they didn't have a chassis that could take it. Wuling's factory frames would twist under that kind of torque. "I know all that. That's why I need a mid-range engine. One that can compete in the $40,000 bracket." Chen Cheng's goal was simple. He needed these engines to make a trade. What kind of trade? He was still working that out, but the moment a solid idea hit, he'd move. There was no time to waste. The calendar had already slipped into 2006. "Got it, give me 2 days." Liao Yuan didn't argue. A mid-range engine had fewer restrictions. It didn't demand the same complexity as a high-end build. The chassis and drivetrain were the real bottlenecks. But all Chen Cheng needed was a capable power plant. Zhu Kaiyang smiled as he poured a fresh cup of tea. "I get the feeling you've got something else up your sleeve." "Yeah. I'm thinking about getting a couple of planes." Chen Cheng gave a faint smile. Not cast-offs from international airlines, either. He needed aircraft with at least a decade of service life left. Planes weren't cheap, and maintenance was its own beast. "Don't tell me you're starting an airline." Zhu Kaiyang shook his head. The idea felt a little wild, though he couldn't quite put his finger on why. Don't worry about it. Once Liao Yuan's done, this deal will be locked. The next day, Chen Cheng met Stenson, FIDI Airlines regional head, at the airport. Stenson's forehead gleamed under the terminal lights. He had to be pushing 60. Mr. Chen, a pleasure. I'm Stenson. Mr. Stenson. Let's talk somewhere private. Chen Cheng drove him away in his Porsche while Zhu Kaiyang handled Stenson's entourage. I didn't expect your English to be so polished, Mr. Chen. Color me impressed. Stenson had flown all over the world, but he'd rarely met a mainland businessman like this. Like I said, I'm a businessman. I operate internationally, though honestly, I haven't even mapped out the foreign exchange side yet. Chen Cheng took him to a new Western restaurant downtown. The owner was an old friend named Smith. Mr. Chen, I hear you want to cooperate with FIDI Airlines. What kind of arrangement did you have in mind? Stenson lifted his coffee cup with a polite smile. In his experience, mainland coffee was always a letdown. He sipped only to save face. Then the aroma hit him. Wait, these beans are from Tanzania, aren't they? I know that scent. Stenson's eyebrows rose. He hadn't heard of Tanzanian coffee making it to these parts. Good knows. They're Tanzanian, but we didn't import them. Chen Cheng explained they had a dedicated plantation down south. The beans they cultivated were just as rich, and soon, their barista would be competing in the World Coffee Rating Championship. That's impressive. I always thought only Tanzanian soil could produce that pure flavor. I had no idea your reach extended that far. Stenson had to recalibrate the whole conversation. Chen Cheng was clearly more than a local player. I'll be direct, Mr. Stenson. With my current resources, buying planes outright would be easy, but I don't want to spend the money. Stenson frowned. I'm a little lost. Enlighten me. I have cutting-edge technology. I want to trade it for a few planes. Chen Cheng didn't dance around it. He said what he had would make any businessman's mouth water. What exactly? Stenson would see for himself. Hold on. Stenson cut him off. Do you know how much a single aircraft costs? Owning it isn't enough. You need routes, professional engineers, an entire infrastructure. Those resources are worth as much as the plane. I've considered all of that. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have invited you here so directly. Chen Cheng slid a blueprint across the table. It was only a rough concept, no details marked. What's this? Stenson glanced down. The next second, his composure cracked. Hell. That's an engine. A car engine. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. No domestic plant can execute this. Hell, even back home would struggle to fund it. The aerodynamics are on par with aircraft engineering. There aren't many specialists in the world who could pull this off. He looked up. Are you sure you want to trade this engine with me? And just like that, the dynamic flipped. It wasn't Chen Cheng who was stunned. It was Stenson. Or what? I don't see anyone else here. If Mr. Ziegler can get me 2 of the latest transport planes, this patent is yours. Wang Ping'an smiled faintly, as if he were discussing something utterly ordinary. Give me a minute. I need to check with my father. Ziegler ran the region, but his father, the man who'd built Guangmei Airlines from nothing, still called the shots. Their network already stretched across more than 70 countries. After 10 minutes on the phone, Ziegler hung up and turned back to Wang Ping'an. He'd let the man listen to every word. Old man Ziegler's answer was careful. Yes, the planes could be delivered, but not brand new ones. We can give you the 2 best transport aircraft in Guangmei's fleet, Ziegler said. They're civilian models, nothing to worry about. That works. Come pick up the engine and the full blueprints tomorrow night. Tomorrow night? Ziegler stared at him. At this point, He was starting to think Wang Ping'an wasn't just designing engines, he was practically mass-producing them. IT upended every expectation. Before walking in here, he never would have imagined this outcome. We've got the best people, Wang Ping'an said, his smile calm. When everyone's effort compounds, the result speaks for itself. The partnership with Guangmei Airlines was only the beginning. There'd be even smoother ways to work together later. Still, selling a mid-range engine for just a few $100 million felt like a steal. He decided to squeeze more out of Ziegler. If the man could open up foreign trade channels, the sting would disappear. I'm genuinely grateful, Mr. Wang. From now on, we'll be the best partners you've got. Ziegler meant every word. He explained that Guangmei already had strategic partners all over the world. Whatever Wang Ping'an needed, Ziegler could find it. Honestly, I'm not hoping for much. I'm just a guy who likes doing business. Wang Ping'an listed the gaps in the domestic market, computers, and supply lines for luxury goods. We can't exactly dig up diamonds here. Those all come from overseas, so I want you to help me find a source. Jewelry, that's a tough game. Ziegler pointed out that a 1-carat diamond already cost tens of thousands, several times the price of gold. No comparison. You're right, international prices keep bouncing around, but I have my own plans. Wang Ping'an needed a range of diamond sizes and qualities. If Ziegler had the muscle, he should stockpile inventory. He was dead serious about jewelry. Tell you what, I know you Chinese have a rule, no middlemen in business. Let me introduce you to an old friend. Wang Ping'an hadn't expected much, but Ziegler's introduction opened a whole new channel. Hugh. We go way back, his whole family is in the jewelry business. Ziegler added that diamonds were dirt cheap at the source, not literally dirt cheap, but compared to retail, it was nothing. Since the turn of the century, diamond prices had shot up to historic highs, a synonym for luxury, but to us, it's just a rock. Hugh greeted Wang Ping'an with a laugh that would have infuriated plenty of people. Exactly. The market's obsession with diamonds is only going to grow. Right now, the domestic industry is hurting for real craftsmanship. The old-school silver and gold shops all had the same tired attitude. Wang Ping'an chased trends. He wasn't about to follow their dusty sales model. Outdated designs couldn't compete. Too tacky, zero emotional value. You know your stuff, Mr. Wang. Let me be straight, what the industry lacks isn't good craftsmen. It's good designers. Hugh and his family had traveled the world, absorbing local culture wherever they went. The most critical piece was the designer's inspiration. A designer is like an engine. You touch one part, and everything else moves. Top designers weren't limited to the West, they existed everywhere. Their inspiration came from life, and only by transforming that could they create real work. Of course, those are just pieces, still a long way from art. Art required several more levels. Quality work plus unique craftsmanship turned into art. I get that. So in your opinion, what I'm missing is a designer. Wang Ping'an's smile was faint. With the right channels, he wasn't worried. He had hundreds of inspirations stored in his head, enough to last at least a decade. Designers matter, yes, but you also need a disciplined team. And honestly, I haven't seen a single training institution in the domestic market yet. Hugh didn't hold back, and that wasn't all. If Wang Ping'an ever got the chance, he needed to visit the world's largest diamond grading authority. Authority is crucial. Wang, don't take Hugh's words the wrong way. He only talks like this because he genuinely wants to work with you. Ziegler couldn't afford to offend Wang Ping'an, and he knew exactly which words to soften, but Wang Ping'an didn't mind. Getting Hugh's approval was enough. Send me 5 diamonds in each size, from half a carat up to 2 carats, top quality only. He was launching a high-end line. Poor color would trash his reputation. I can agree to all that, but there's one thing I don't understand. What type of jewelry are you actually planning to make? Hude was genuinely curious. He couldn't imagine anyone in Wang Pingen's circle being a top-tier designer. Wang Pingen laughed. The inspiration, me. I'm the brand, but if you get me rock-bottom prices, I might cut you in on some shares. Stocks and all that are trivial. What matters is getting this thing off the ground. I'd even work for you. No problem. Ziegler let out a dismissive laugh, as if Wang Pingen had just suggested something impossible. Wang Pingen wasn't stupid. He could hear the mockery in the man's tone, but it didn't slow him down. Once Ziegler saw his real capabilities, he wouldn't dare set foot in the mainland market, no matter how hot it was getting. Dinner was at Houting. Naturally, Wang Pingen introduced Feng Yang to the group. They all ran in the same circles anyway, and their industries didn't overlap. For Feng Yang, who owned restaurants, this was a solid opportunity. Since Mr. Feng and Mr. Wang are so close, I have an idea, Dolph said, smiling as he drained his glass of baijiu. He suggested Feng Yang launch an even more exclusive restaurant chain, something reserved for premium clientele only. Look, if I were rating this hotel on stars, it'd easily hit 3. Why not go all the way? He's right. Prices on the mainland aren't high yet. Locking down prime locations now sets you up for the future, Ziegler added. They talked about restaurants abroad that catered exclusively to top-tier clients, the kind of people whose spending could dwarf 100, even 1,000, regular consumers. Of course, mid-tier customers still mattered. Every business needed a solid base. All right. I'll give it a shot. Feng Yang stood and raised his glass. He had to admit, these foreigners had a different way of thinking. Brother Wang, this is exactly what you told me 6 months ago. I knew I should have started back then, Feng Yang said, regret creeping into his voice. Prices had already jumped 30% since then, and that wasn't even counting real estate, which was guaranteed to keep climbing. You've got tens of millions in hand. Why not set up in a few major cities? Wang Pingen suggested 8 locations, tops. Too many branches would defeat the whole purpose. There were only so many first-tier cities, and it wasn't even clear if enough qualified locations existed. Yeah. I'll think it through. Feng Yang nodded, genuinely grateful to Wang Pingen. Without him, he wouldn't be where he was. Every year, he collected a decent dividend from Wang Pingen's ventures, all thanks to that trip north with him. It's nothing. We're brothers. What's the point of making money alone? By the year-end summary, Wang Pingen's liquid assets had reached a staggering 2 billion yuan. Dividends alone had pulled in tens of millions. We have to keep up with the times, or us old dogs will get left behind. Wang Pingen never doubted his decisions. Without these people's hard work and loyalty, he wouldn't have come this far. After a few days at home, Wang Pingen started the process of transferring the kids to a better school. His only condition was that they learned both languages well. Their old school was great. Why switch them all of a sudden? Yu was confused. This hadn't been in their plans. The old school was fine, and the teachers were good, but they didn't offer foreign language classes. Wang Pingen smiled wryly. Better to start training them now than wait a few years for English to become a necessity. Kids absorbed things fast. He and Yu hadn't realized how critical a second language was until college. That lesson had stung. He didn't want his kids falling behind at the starting line. At least this one hurdle had to be cleared. Okay. I don't have a problem with it, but you'd better let me loosen up a bit. Yu said. She'd been restless lately. Even though her days were full, something was missing. How about this? Have your parents look after the kids, and come with me to the south tomorrow. Wang Pingen planned to head south, then leave the country from Yuntai City. First stop, the global fashion capital. He wanted to see firsthand what real international standards looked like. In the food industry, you had to think beyond general tastes and focus on your target audience. And since he'd chosen import-export trade, some field research was essential. A family man in business inspired more trust in clients. That was a timeless truth. How long do you think this trip will be? Yu asked, a little nervous. She'd never been part of anything this important. Not sure, maybe a week or two. Wang Ping'an laughed, telling his wife she was more worked up now than on their wedding day. Come on. I'm just an ordinary worker. How am I supposed to handle those businessmen? Yu pouted, hinting she wanted to back out, but Wang Ping'an wasn't giving her the chance. They finally had an opportunity for some real time alone. Why would he let that slip? Besides, Yu had a solid education, a graduate from a legitimate top university. Her skills were real. Honey, you can help me a lot. I promise you'll learn more on this trip than you expect. The most valuable thing was Yu's design ability. Wang Ping'an couldn't do it all by himself. If she designed products from a woman's perspective, specifically for women, the market appeal would be on a completely different level. Those were hidden advantages he couldn't afford to overlook. I see now, this was your plan all along. Wang Ping'an, you're devious. Yu bit her husband's arm. He chuckled. 5 hours later, they landed in Yuju. The flight was fast enough. Sister-in-law's here, brother Wang. You should have called ahead. Dongmi grinned and waved Yu into the back seat. They headed straight for the commercial district. Right before New Year's, old Jiang opened a guest house. The style, the atmosphere, everything's really well done, and he even planted a pink flower sea in the front yard using eco-friendly materials. We'll have a proper place to stay from now on. Wang Ping'an hadn't expected a casual comment he'd made to stick in old Jiang's mind. When they arrived, he realized just how impressive the setting was. That's old Jiang for you. Enjoying life always comes first. The guest house was perfectly situated, nestled against the mountains and water, far from the city's noise. This is the only spot like it in the South End. I got it for 4 million. That was already a steal. True enough. In a place as expensive as Yuju, 4 million for a guest house of this quality was practically a gift. Inside, old Jiang poured them each a cup of herbal tea. Why does this taste so strange? Old Jiang smiled as he refilled their cups. This is our most traditional herbal tea. He ate so naturally, it's not sweet at all. He told Chen Cheng this blend had the highest concentration of botanicals and was the healthiest version. Tea was tea, drinks were drinks. 2 completely different things. Tea would never work as a mass-market beverage anyway. Old Jiang always kept that line sharp. Uncle Jiang really knows his herbal tea. His family's been making it for generations. Chen Cheng raised his cup with a smile and nodded for Zhongyi to try it. She closed her eyes, braced herself, then took the plunge. After one sip, her brow slowly relaxed. Okay, I have to admit, this is really good. That deep, cooling sensation was so satisfying she couldn't help taking 2 more quick swallows. The flavor was already starting to fade. Plenty of people drink herbal tea around here. The climate's dry. This is the only thing that actually cools you down. Old Jiang poured out the last of his cup. You couldn't overdo something this potent. So, Chen, you didn't bring your wife all the way here just for a vacation, did you? Old Jiang's smile said he already knew the answer. He'd pegged Zhongyi and Chen Cheng as sharp operators the moment they walked in. No, I needed a designer, so I pulled my wife in to fill the gap. Her skills are as good as mine. Chen Cheng wasn't exaggerating. Zhongyi had the talent to handle product design without breaking a sweat. Men and women saw things differently. Combine both perspectives, and you could reach every kind of consumer. Don't listen to him, Uncle Jiang. I'm just here to see Guangzhou. Before Zhongyi could finish being humble, a new problem landed in her lap. All of Chen Cheng's product packaging needed a complete redesign. Consumer tastes were shifting fast, and everyone was chasing the next new thing. That was exactly why they were so desperate for fresh blood. The export orders are confirmed, but they all require new packaging designs. Xiao Qiong laid the detailed proposal on the table, making it clear Chen Cheng was responsible for the entire process from start to finish. Alright, let's see what we're working with. Chen Cheng opened the proposal. The blueprint inside was thorough, nearly every detail was mapped out, but getting a drink like this into the domestic market, that wasn't going to be easy. For one thing, there's nothing special about this beverage. It's just a sports drink. I don't know what the overseas market looks like. He started digging into the research as he spoke. To his surprise, the brand already had a pretty solid reputation abroad. Sports drinks are all about simplicity. No celebrity endorsements, even. Zhongyi pointed out that if they went this route, it wouldn't take much time. She thought they could gradually redesign every piece of packaging from the ground up. It's an aluminum can. No plastic heat seals. We spray the design directly onto the metal. Chen Cheng turned the laptop toward his wife. The latest model, perfect for design and post-production. He hadn't spent a cent of his own money on it. Senelina had provided everything. If a product like this hits the market, do you think it'll affect our herbal tea? Old Jiang's question cut straight to the heart of it. Some things you just couldn't predict. Maybe. Chen Cheng's smile was faint, but the two drinks served different purposes. They wouldn't clash head-on right away. Besides, imported products didn't steal market share overnight. It all came down to whether consumers would accept them. If customers didn't bite, there wasn't much anyone could do. Let me try designing something first. Zhongyi barely glanced at the reference materials. Her mind was already racing with ideas. In under 3 hours, she had a flawless cross-section design ready. We don't need to lock in the colors yet. The image alone is striking. Old Jiang spoke up first. He thought it matched current trends perfectly. The biggest brand logo sat dead center. There was no way this drink would fly under the radar. Then it's settled. I'll send it over to Senelina immediately. Chen Cheng wasn't wasting a second. If he could, he would put Zhongyi in charge of the whole design team, but she didn't work for anyone else. His wife's creative output belonged to him alone. Our current market share is 40%. There's no direct competition in the same product category. Xiao Qiong had analyzed every one of Chen Cheng's food brands. The co-branded editions alone had already sold over 100 million units. That's only temporary. Keep in mind, the alliance was just preparation for overseas markets. We'll probably need to redesign the packaging again. If Chen Cheng wanted to go global, he'd have to rebuild from scratch. Foreign tastes weren't like domestic ones. Keeping the core identity intact while adapting to those differences, that wasn't going to be easy. Honey, do you feel like everything we're making right now is just catering to what society expects? Zhongyi hesitated. Something about their approach felt off. She just couldn't name it yet. If we're only trying to dominate the domestic market, what we have now is enough. Breaking into overseas markets is a completely different beast. Cultural barriers were one problem, dietary differences were another. The real mountain was getting foreign consumers to accept Chinese culture. We've already reached out to over a dozen Chinatowns. They've all agreed to carry our products exclusively, but they can't grow market share beyond those neighborhoods. Xiao Qiong's point hit hard. Sales inside Chinatowns stayed inside Chinatowns. Outside those boundaries, it was a free market economy. Every region had independent market dynamics. Conflict would be the worst possible move. Those bastards still haven't gotten back to me. Time to turn up the pressure. Chen Cheng's position was crystal clear. He'd held up his end of the deal. If they still refused to let him expand, he'd play hardball. In Guangzhou, Morpheus and the other bosses had been invited over, flanked by a group of Latin American businessmen. These merchants didn't dare refuse Chen Cheng's invitation, but none of them had realized it was a trap. We've given those bosses too many perks. They've gotten comfortable. Now that we need their help, every single one is playing dumb. Xiao Qiong didn't bother hiding his frustration. If upper management hadn't tied his hands, he would have lost his temper a long time ago. No rush. 2006 is the critical year. They'll come around. In Latin America, there was a supply network built specifically for foreign companies. They called it the Green Zone. It covered the entire region, not just the autonomous states, but a long list of swing states too. Mr. Chen, we're not really here for the coffee, are we? A few of the bosses traded glances and broke out laughing. Of course not. Coffee you can get anytime. Chen Cheng let a faint, dismissive smile cross his face and motioned for everyone to sit. We're here to talk about what comes next between us. The second his tone shifted, the bosses started doing the math. Cooperation meant a plan, and as soon as Chen Cheng laid out exactly what he wanted, every last one of them pushed back. Mr. Chen, it's not that we don't want to help you, but the market environment out there is brutal. I can't just swing a door open for you. They forced tight smiles and refused to cut him a single break. Why not? Chen Cheng asked it like he was genuinely puzzled. He had already guessed they'd say no, but he hadn't expected them to be this absolute. Simple business in Latin America isn't something just anyone can step into. Even you, Mr. Chen, can't change that. Morpheus was the one who spoke, making sure his meaning landed. If this were about other foreign channels back on the mainland, he could look the other way, but if the rest of them weren't willing, there wasn't much he could do about it. Let me be clear, Chen Cheng said coldly. I don't like that answer. He made it obvious his influence wasn't unlimited, but this mattered to him. These bosses had zero intention of helping. They were thinking about nothing but their own margins. Sorry you don't like it, Mr. Chen, our hands are tied. Let's pick this up another time. Since that's your attitude, I won't waste time making things comfortable for you either. From here on out, every man for himself. Chen Cheng walked out of the hotel, furious. His first move was going to be squeezing these foreign traders straight out of the market. He couldn't touch the quotas they had already locked in, but he could choke off every supply service and exclusive route they depended on. Without those, they were crippled. It didn't matter how badly the mainland needed their products. Chen Cheng had his network locked down so tight that no partner would dare cross him at a moment like this. That damn Chen Cheng is like a rabid dog. He's coming straight for us. The foreign traders started getting calls from their people. Just when they were about to close deals, Chen Cheng had put out the word. Anyone who did business with them was an enemy. The mainland bosses, predictably, chose to respect the bigger power and backed off. Fine. Let's drag this out and see who holds out longer. Morpheus sounded confident. He argued that in the mainland's current climate, a boycott like this wouldn't amount to much, especially since it was only Chen Cheng fighting them, not the consumers. They're probably laughing it up at home right now, but I'm not just going for their throats. Chen Cheng announced he was starting work on substitute products. The market did need those goods. Whether it needed those particular merchants was an entirely different question. All consumers really cared about was a decent alternative that performed just as well, way more practical than any discount. Are we taking on too much risk messing with their entire supply chain like this? There's risk, but it's temporary. Chen Cheng smiled faintly. Strangling them to death wasn't his style. Forcing them into a corner was a different story. They didn't have the muscle to go head-to-head with him. Sure, abroad, Chen Cheng had no foothold. They could cut his lifeline there, and it would make sense. But domestically, that wasn't the case. If they wanted to fight him to the bitter end, he'd show them exactly who came out on top. If we don't have even that much patience, how are we supposed to stand against them? Chen Cheng let out a short laugh. Those few bosses weren't even worth his attention. Within 3 days, they'd be turning on each other. He didn't need 3 days. By that night, they were already panicking. Normally, their daily cash flow was impressive. Now, it was a disaster. Not only was there zero income, but the daily expenses were astronomical. If they couldn't at least break even to keep the company stable, staff morale would collapse, and sure enough, the company was already showing signs of turmoil. Did you hear? Chen Cheng made his move against us. We're finished. Seriously, nobody touched our goods today, and management isn't giving us a solution. The employees put 2 and 2 together. This was the start of a full meltdown. Stop with the useless chatter. We have countermeasures. The bosses were still stubborn. They decided to go for high volume at razor-thin margins. In their minds, consumers were all the same. They lived and died by price, so they slashed prices to the bone, willing to take any profit, no matter how small. They dropped their prices. Xiao Qiong was monitoring the market data in real time and sent the charts over. Dropping prices will be their death. Chen Cheng didn't order anyone to buy up the stock. He was waiting. When the prices hit rock bottom, he'd swoop in and cut the ground out from under them. He wasn't going to buy anything himself, but he could cause a market upheaval. Aren't you worried this will send them over the edge? Something feels off about this. Zhongyi was nervous. She had never seen her husband do business like this. This wasn't the Chen Cheng she remembered. He seemed like a completely different person. They started it. I'm just waiting for them to break. Chen Cheng's gaze was sharp. In business, if you didn't go all the way, there was no point in fighting at all. Yes, it turned out, a lot of the bosses had quietly gotten in touch with each other, wanting to make peace with Chen Cheng. They didn't have a huge share of the overseas market, but they still had plenty of sway in their own backyards. That was home turf, and there was nothing to worry about there. Making peace with me is fine. I'll lay out my terms. Chen Cheng gave another faint, mocking smile. He slid a sheet of paper across the table. A full page of conditions. The bosses read through the terms carefully. More clauses than they'd expected, but most were acceptable. They'd come here with genuine intent after all. We can agree to all of this, as long as Mr. Chen is willing to let this go. Their tone was humble, almost deferential. This was Chen Cheng's turf. No one was foolish enough to pick a fight they couldn't win. If you knew this was coming, why fight it? You're all on board now, so I'll accept. Chen Cheng pulled out the contract and gestured for them to sign. It was just paperwork, but every clause tied directly to their mainland businesses. Anyone who backed out would pay 10 times the cost of today's deal. No one hesitated. They signed. Chen Cheng's overseas trade had officially entered a new era. Right now I only have sea routes and 2 trading teams, he told them. Next, I'm planning to use air freight to ship directly to Latin America and the Middle East. He was still weighing other regions, deciding whether the investment in manpower and resources was worth it. I think Mr. Chen should let us be your agents, one boss suggested. Selling through our own channels would be much more convenient. After all, you don't have any franchisees overseas. Blunt, but true. I'm fine with that. Take the goods and see how much demand there really is. He wasn't about to dump everything at once. That would only cause a backlog. Slow and steady wins. His trading teams had limited reach. Not every channel was accessible. With the deal settled, Chen Cheng felt a weight lift, but he made one thing clear. If he didn't see results within a month, he wouldn't hesitate to cut ties. Mr. Chen, you can't say that. You know your products are food items, the customer base isn't easy to crack overnight. Then don't blame me when your own products stop moving on the mainland, Chen Cheng said with a faint smile. They were playing mind games with him. Clever, but not nearly clever enough. He didn't care. If they failed to deliver, they'd pay. We can only promise to try our best. If local consumers don't take to it, there's not much we can do. The bosses nodded in agreement. They'd already contacted their distributors, planning to send Chen Cheng's goods in batches to various regions, about 100,000 units total. That number sounded massive, enough to clear out all the inventory, but spread across multiple channels, it barely made a dent. Food factory could produce that much in a single day. 100,000 is just the warm-up. I won't give you more than that. Hearing this, the bosses let out a collective sigh of relief. There was nothing left to argue about. After leaving the company, Chen Cheng started planning his next moves. There are still 3 bosses who haven't caved. Do we keep the blockade going? Xiaoqiang asked. Those 3 shared many of the same channels as the ones who'd already surrendered. Keep it. Let them learn the hard way. If I were that easy to deal with, what would I need them for? Chen Cheng said dismissively. His stance was clear. Got it. Xiaoqiang's fingers flew across the keyboard as he relayed the order. Some rejoiced, others mourned. The bosses who had already surrendered were smiling. At least their blockade was lifted, and their accounts were finally in the black. But the 3 led by Morris were suffering. They'd thought they could hold out. The first to fall were their own employees. In this environment, building a business wasn't easy at all. Now they could all feel the threat of bankruptcy closing in. If this keeps up, morale will tank. We won't be able to work anymore. Morris sighed. He knew this was all Chen Cheng's doing. Are we really going to just give in? Another boss grumbled. He was determined to fight to the end. All he wants is our overseas market. As long as we don't give him that, he can't touch us. He was confident his international standing would force Chen Cheng to back down, but the moment the words left his mouth, one of his men reported the news. The other bosses had already surrendered. Chen Cheng had secured the channels without needing them. What? Morris gaped. He never saw it coming. Those spineless bastards. The other boss was shaking with rage. They wanted to stand their ground, but the tide had turned. This was beyond their control. Forget it. Let's go apologize to Chen Cheng. Morris made the call. Whatever humiliation Chen Cheng threw at him, he'd take it. They had to get production back on track. No more trouble, at least for now. The 3 of them went straight to Uncle Jiang's guest house, knowing Chen Cheng was staying there. Well, look who it is. What can I do for you 3? Chen Cheng drawled, lighting a cigarette. Mr. Chen, you know why we're here, Morris said with a smile, offering a cigar. Try this. Not a fan of cigars, this cigarette does the job, Chen Cheng said, waving it off. Go ahead. We've been thinking, we need to clear up this misunderstanding. With global trade, you wouldn't want to lose the overseas market, would you? That much was true. Otherwise, Chen Cheng wouldn't have wasted his time chatting with 3 foreigners. If not for the Latin American market share they controlled, the biggest chunk, he wouldn't have spared them a second glance. So it's simple. We're here in good faith. The 3 bosses laid their gifts on the table. The latest cosmetics, trendy handbags, clearly aimed at a woman's taste. They'd done their homework. I'm a man, those aren't much use to me, Chen Cheng said bluntly. Take them back. Please, keep them. We know your wife is here. These are for her. Don't refuse. These are expensive, aren't they? Yu picked up a jar, studying the unfamiliar label. Only a few thousand each. They're the latest launches. One of the bosses jumped in quickly, watching his tone around Wang Ping'an's woman. The branding looks solid. It's just not selling well here. Wang Ping'an's lips curved. He saw the opening. The year was 2006. The cosmetics market was about to explode. If he waited to pivot into beauty later, he'd be too late. Starting from scratch, a nightmare. Better to buy the brand outright. An acquisition wasn't on the table before, but let me ask around for you. Keynes dialed a number. The call connected almost instantly. What's the price for Pinching? The voice on the other end, an older man, hesitated. Pinching hadn't cracked many overseas markets yet, but the name still carried weight. No plans to sell still. Keynes's question planted a seed. 500 million. Pinching is yours. Done. I'll confirm with him. Keynes hung up, grinning. He relayed the figure to Wang Ping'an. 500 million for the entire brand. All markets. No red tape. 500 million was reasonable. Pinching was a legacy overseas beauty brand that had once stood out, but recent competition had crushed their cosmetics division. The price was fair. Tell him I'll take it. Have him fly to mainland China. Wang Ping'an didn't blink. He had 500 million parked and ready. Hell, he could stretch to 1.5 billion if he had to, but Pinching wasn't worth that. After accepting the offer, the older man booked the next available flight with his entire team. He was eager to meet Wang Ping'an in person, curious about the kind of businessman who had set his sights on his company. I'll be honest. Pinching's cosmetics still have pull, but the pricing is too high, and the target audience is too narrow. Wang Ping'an wasn't trashing the brand. It was niche luxury, not for everyone, but in his hands, he wouldn't grind away in one direction. Pinching could branch into new channels, a completely new operating model. As long as it was built around the brand, it could work. Cosmetics, clothing, luxury accessories, all of it. The real prize, he needed a brand to crack the high-end market. Half a day later, he met the older man at the airport. Mr. Wang, unless I'm mistaken, we've never met. True, you were in Latin America. I was in mainland China, first time face to face. Wang Ping'an smiled, guided the man into the car, and told the driver to go. After settling the whole team into a hotel, Wang Ping'an got down to business, personnel planning with the older man. First condition. No changes to current management. Your overseas operation becomes a branch, headquarters moves to mainland China. The older man nodded. He had no choice but to agree. And if the managers don't want to relocate? Then they stay overseas. Branch managers, big difference from headquarters. Wang Ping'an's smile was faint. He had no intention of running Pinching only for mainland China. Consumer demands for cosmetics had grown complicated. The old path was wrong. That's why Pinching had lost market share. The blame didn't rest on the brand alone. It was a management failure across the board. 500 million isn't a loss. If you keep running it the same way, Pinching will be dead in 3 years. Wang Ping'an's logic was airtight. He knew that around 2010, Pinching would try branching into clothing, but as a high-end brand, the clothes wouldn't come cheap. A plain t-shirt would sell for thousands just because of the label. Some limited edition collaborations would hit tens of thousands. You sound ahead of your time. We hadn't chosen to pivot yet. The older man smirked, but he wasn't about to turn down the money. Right there, Wang Ping'an wired the 500 million. He signed the contract. Pinching was his now, not just the overseas branch, all of Pinching's factories. He'd move them all to mainland China and hit the domestic market harder. One more thing, you can start fresh, but you can't use the brand and you can't poach anyone I'm keeping. Wang Ping'an was firm. He needed Pinching's designers and planners. Beyond that, he didn't care. If others wanted to leave, he wouldn't stop them. Fine, agreed. The older man didn't stay long after the handover. He flew back to Latin America. The next day, The news ripped through Guangzhou. Mainland entrepreneur acquires Pinching for a fortune. With enough money, anything's possible, but I don't get it. Why a beauty brand? Old Jiang asked, genuinely puzzled. If Wang Ping'an had consulted him first, he would have killed the deal. There's nothing wrong with beauty, and this move, it's a stroke of genius. Wang Ping'an told old Jiang to think bigger. His vision wasn't for the present. He was going to create an era. There were plenty of top-tier clothing factories in mainland China, some with their own brands, but Wang Ping'an could simply find OEM manufacturers and build on Pinching's model. The hard part would be sourcing materials. Getting quality cotton wasn't easy. Let's scout the Northwest. If we can source high-quality cotton, that's the way to go. Wang Ping'an's first products would be pure cotton t-shirts, then jackets and accessories. They had to be distinct from Pinching's original styles, something the brand had never tried before. He turned to Yu. We'll start with cosmetics, honey. You handle the design team. A dozen designers fly in tomorrow. They're all yours. Now that the E Group was ready to consider an IPO, backed by all those industries, there shouldn't be any major problems. But Chen Cheng still felt like something was missing. They didn't have an online arm that could support the entire group's operations. If they just kept developing piecemeal, they could manage. But their main business was food. That came with serious limitations, so we pick something good to take public? Zhu Kaiyang asked, doing the math in his head. Right now, the most profitable sectors across the board were securities, followed by food, but express delivery and logistics were surging. He figured if they raised funds through an IPO, they should go all in on logistics. Let's take our logistics company public. Once the car business gets going, we can list that too. Those were Chen Cheng's only two plans right now. Everything else was off the table. Securities had nothing to do with them, and even if they listed that offline economic model, it wouldn't make much difference. There was no room for expansion. Logistics was different. Taking over the domestic market wasn't something you could finish in a year or two. Even with massive investment, they'd only covered about 60 cities so far. Some remote areas couldn't even support a delivery station. The transport costs were too high, and without consumers, it wasn't viable. We don't seem to have a better option. The current market isn't easy, Zhu Kaiyang said with a wry smile. Better to wait 2 years than make a move now. Contact Xiao Ma, see how his online platform is doing. Funny enough, that very evening, Xiao Ma showed up at Chen Cheng's door with some homemade dishes and a bottle of baijiu. He happened to be in Guangzhou for a meeting, so he swung by to see his major shareholder. Xiao Ma, you didn't have to bring gifts just because you're here, Chen Cheng said, shaking his head. It was all simple home cooking. Did Xiao Ma think his place didn't have good food? Don't be like that. It's about the vibe, right? I heard you're prepping for an IPO. What's the plan? Xiao Ma laid out all the dishes, and the two started drinking. First, we list the logistics company. The key is whether your internet sales platform can take off. Chen Cheng sounded anxious. Buyers weren't the issue, it was the sellers. Every listing needed review, and if the seller base couldn't support a huge system, building it would be a waste. I've already thought about that. There's this thing called big data now. With that information, we can analyze the target audience and what they like. Xiao Ma told Chen Cheng that thanks to big data, he'd already built the platform. They had 3,000 merchants on board, and the number was growing fast. Their approval threshold wasn't low either. They required a detailed evaluation and screening. Not bad. 3,000 merchants is like a huge trading market. Online sales with offline delivery, that's a solid model. It was the internet age. Xiao Ma had spent 4 full years developing this online operation model, from the custodial accounts to our internal corporate accounts to the customer fund storage accounts. They're all linked, with 13-layer encryption. Xiao Ma said it with pride that he could already see the future trend. Old Jew, you hear that? We can move forward with the timeline. 10 billion in funding for Zhu Kaiyang to develop the entire mainland, building their express and logistics stations everywhere. Each province would get a giant logistics hub for transshipment, and all the sorting centers would follow the same model. Post job listings. 4,000 a month for logistics and express experience, 3,000 for sorting. Chen Cheng said this model needed massive cash flow. They had to offer high salaries to attract talent. 3,000 a month? That guy's crazy. No kidding, our express workers get 1,500. Can't compete on salary alone. The bosses of the 3 major express companies were meeting to figure out their strategy. They'd been trying to avoid Chen Cheng by competing on price, but with Chen Cheng's high salaries, workers from all over the country flocked to him. Their market expansion surged. Even remote areas started adding logistics services. That guy's determined to shut us out. So what do we do? Just let him roll over us? Not a chance. An Chiong, the executive chairman of the 3 express companies, swore he'd make the industry fight back. They'd stick with their model. They couldn't match the pay, but they didn't lack workers. Sure, compared to other industries, express delivery wages were decent. Even with Chen Cheng poaching their people, they could still operate efficiently. Market analysis shows we currently hold 70% of the market share. Zhu Kaiyang was running reports every day. If they could hold that 70%, there wouldn't be any major problems down the line. And even if there were, they wouldn't be huge, especially since Chen Cheng had already launched air freight. The air route was expensive, but it carried a lot of cargo. It saved a ton of time and avoided transport headaches. Except if the shipment is small on a run, we won't even cover the fuel cost. Zhu Kaiyang laughed wryly. Small package senders weren't keen on air freight. Of course there's a market. Express delivery is about speed. What's the point if it's not fast? They were selling speed and convenience. Their efficiency was the best in the industry, no question. Plus, every product sold on Xiao Ma's platform defaulted to their courier service. That alone eliminated the need to coordinate with others. Of course, sellers could use other carriers, but then Chen Cheng took a cut. Who wouldn't be pissed? They were competitors. And every package shipped through someone else meant paying Chen Cheng en Chiong, and the others had no choice. Chen Cheng was too fast, always striking first. Who knows how long this will last? We'll take it one step at a time. They never saw it coming. Chen Cheng was on the rise. With a mobile app, customers could track every step of the delivery process. Transparency like that wasn't easy to pull off. And not every company dared to do it. Their system was fully integrated with Xiao Ma's Anada platform, meaning any order placed on the platform showed the shipping route and timestamps in real time. Every sorting center updated the information. For us, whether it's overnight shipping or local delivery, it's about staying ahead of the curve. We drive the speed of the future. Wang Ping'an knew that in his bones. Every move he made was deliberate, calculated. If he hadn't jumped on the opening the second it appeared, he wouldn't have moved in so aggressively with the acquisition. And now, the headlines had another reason to explode. Tianji, the overseas brand he acquired, had officially launched online. You could order it from your couch and have it dropped at your door the next day. Check the daily order volume, Fengyang said. The numbers alone would make anyone sick with jealousy. Wang Ping'an didn't have to guess what kind of splash a flagship store like this made. The big brands were already circling, ready to follow his lead as consumer spending power kept climbing. For this launch, Tianji's theme is pride of national products, Wang Ping'an said. And I want a limited edition drop, just 1,000 units. To fuel a buying frenzy, You had to hijack the customer's pulse. From where Wang Ping'an sat at the top, every move he made was a direct hit. That explained the million-plus followers Tianji racked up the day the announcement went live. Feng Yang admitted, honestly, after we acquired it, a lot of people thought we were crazy, but the second those products hit the market, the whole conversation flipped. Feng Yang couldn't stop grinning. He'd worried it might backfire, but besides expanding their overseas distribution, domestic consumption was blowing up. In under a year, the local market alone would dwarf all of their international sales combined. That insane? Wang Ping'an raised an eyebrow. He hadn't run those numbers yet. Could the tech game really be that wild? In today's world, innovative products had gone from unattainable luxury to daily necessity. And where there were price gaps, there was money to be made. If they offered something the ordinary brands couldn't, it justified the cost. But if they delivered more for the same price, that was a heist. There was no shortage of buyers. The road they were carving just kept getting wider. I'm almost impressed with myself right now, Feng Yang said, leaning back. Without this strategy, we never would have cornered the market this fast. Gut instincts sharper than a scalpel. Without them, they'd never have locked it down so fast. That's just how the consumers move, Feng Yang added. And right now, we're riding the perfect wave. By the next morning, Tianji ads had flooded every media platform. Wang Ping'an was suddenly the poster boy for the pride of national products. It wasn't just the acquisition either. The latest collection was built on a distinctly Chinese design philosophy. A design and strategy like that, how could it fail? Scanning the campaign, Wang Ping'an's grin broke loose. He didn't even have to ask who masterminded the theme. His wife was still asleep in the next room. She'd gotten in from work only an hour before he rolled out of bed. Nai Xiaolong was on the phone, unable to hide his shock. It's completely eye-popping. Seriously, I've never seen a campaign hit this hard. He told Wang Ping'an that people were losing their minds, fighting to buy whatever they could get their hands on. Only 300 sets were in physical boutiques, the rest were exclusively online. And get this, people came in from out of town just for this. We launched 3 days early. Their frenzy is exactly what I was counting on, Wang Ping'an said, waving it off. No big surprise. There'd be time to enjoy the buzz later. Right now, he had a more urgent problem to solve. The composite materials negotiations had hit a dead end. Not because of the supply chain, the price just wasn't landing. Nai Xiaolong shrugged. They're trying to bleed us dry just because we're outsiders. 3 different sales teams came back empty-handed. Enough. I'll handle it myself. Get all those sales representatives and bring them with me. It wasn't a request. Wang Ping'an was airborne within the hour, heading southwest. He'd secure that raw material contract. One way or another, decisive moves drew decisive people. Wang Ping'an was absolute proof of that. They rolled into the southwestern border region like a thunderstorm. The reality hit him instantly. It was nothing like he'd pictured. A weathered supplier met him with a scowl. It ain't that we won't sell to you, city man. You see a composite bloom on those fields? The supplier was clearly annoyed, grumbling under his breath. Did city businessmen not have eyes? Were they all this stupid? Wang Ping'an met his gaze without flinching. I know it's off-season for production, but I saw your stockpile when I landed. He pointed toward a large warehouse about 100 yards off. Inside, massive white bales of composite material had clearly been sitting untouched for a while. That's the premium store, the supplier grunted. Your price is way too low for that grade. The supplier shut him down outright. He explained that those bales weren't usually released until the fall season. So, you're telling me that in the fall, the price magically drops? Wang Ping'an asked, a thin smile playing on his lips. Right. If business ran on hopes and magic, he wouldn't own the largest logistics firm in the country. Here's my real deal. I'm not looking for a one-off. Wang Ping'an's voice dropped, steady and absolute. I'll sign a 10-year contract. Every single bale you produce, I take it all. The sneer fell right off the supplier's face. What did you say? He was frozen in place. You grow it, Wang Ping'an said simply. I buy it for the next decade. Then his eyes narrowed. But I only want the premium eco-friendly grade. I catch you mixing in product from another region. The deal is dead on the spot. The supplier scrambled to nod. No problem at all. Absolutely not. A decade's crop was an unpredictable gamble for any supplier, and the upfront capital to secure it was a mind-boggling sum. But Wang Ping'an was as shrewd as he was rich. He'd only pay for the first year in advance. If the supplier wanted a long-term partnership, the rest would settle at the end of every production cycle with the final shipment. Thank you, oh, thank you. The supplier practically tripped over himself. Without another word, he threw the warehouse doors open himself, shouting for his workers. Bale after bale of pristine white composite hit the loading docks. Trucks rumbled to life, heading for Yuju. Wiping the sweat from his brow, the supplier grinned. Since you're here, Mr. Wang, you can't rush off now. Stay a few days. Let me host you properly. He ushered Wang Ping'an inside over a cup of tea. He finally came clean. It wasn't that he didn't want to sell the composite. It was that one-off deals killed them. We produce a lot, but if it just sits in the warehouse and rots, looking for a buyer. He shook his head. We don't dare produce the next round. He admitted the old-timers were leaving the business. They said working a factory line was a safer bet than producing composite materials. Don't say that, Wang Ping'an replied, his voice softening just a fraction. You should keep producing. Trust me. The world is waking up to premium eco-friendly materials like yours. Wang Ping'an had already inspected it. The entire stockpile was top-grade eco-friendly composite. Raw material like this simply didn't exist in most places. The cotton was too good to waste. Chen Cheng made up his mind to bring in every piece of modern machinery he owned. Point one objective: build an operation that served his own production lines without relying on anyone else. Demand is massive, and their equipment can't keep up. He stood in the warehouse, scanning the backlog of raw cotton, mental math firing. The stock could produce a fraction of what he needed, and the fields still growing wouldn't be harvested fast enough with the outdated gear they had on hand. Xiao Chong shifted his weight. Aren't we going overboard setting up shop down here? Who knows how long this one-shot deal even lasts? Forget Yuju, you couldn't grow this stuff in Modu if you tried. Chen Cheng had a 10-year contract. That gave him full confidence he'd recoup his investment and then some. He wasn't just planning to scoop up the cotton, he intended to buy most of the surrounding fields and break ground on his own industrial park. Without wasting time, he arranged a meeting with the regional officials responsible for tertiary industry in the southwest. The local government was desperate to boost that sector. When a serious businessman showed up ready to invest, they practically fell over themselves to help. Prices bottomed out, subsidies piled on. By the time the paperwork was done, Chen Cheng had already saved a substantial chunk of money. Sort out all labor issues locally. We start building the plant tomorrow. In his view, cotton processing didn't require heavy industry. Everything was light production, zero pollution. The only unavoidable cost was fuel for the harvesters. From that point on, every cotton farmer who saw Chen Cheng noticed the shift in his status. Point one hesitantly approached Mr. Chen. How should we handle the warehouse renovations? Leave it for now. I'm taking all the current stock with me. After I leave, A technical team will contact you, follow their instructions exactly. He wasn't sticking around the Southwest any longer than necessary. 4 months, he calculated, would cover all the production zones. By then, the cotton would be ready for harvest. Perfect timing. 3 days later, he arrived back in Uju with the entire shipment. Finally, he could run it through proper processing lines except for one glaring headache. His own factory wasn't here. Turning raw cotton into textile material on the spot would eat up time and rack up shipping costs both ways. Using his own logistics channels would create another set of problems he didn't need. After a moment, he gave the order, do a preliminary processing run here, then ship everything through our logistics. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best call. He regretted coming straight back to Uju, but the trip wasn't a total loss. He could use the time to scout the market. What he found surprised him. The internet cafes they'd opened were killing it. Not just Huatianchi's esports-themed location, but Yang Shalong's food and drink hybrid model. 2-foot traffic was through the roof. Customers were willing to stand around waiting rather than leave. You guys thriving like this makes the whole trip worth it. Chen Cheng walked in with a grin. Both bosses happened to be there. Yo, Chen, over here. Huatianchi shot up and waved him toward the spacious front counter. Yang Shalong couldn't hold back a wide grin. You won't believe it. We ran a small trial with your method, and business just exploded. Every single day is the same, not one open computer. Keep the drinks and snacks moving. How's my stock selling? Chen Cheng's gaze landed on his branded snacks displayed on the counter. It sells. Used to restock every 3 days, now it's once a week, but the volume's up several times over. Yang Shalong said if storage allowed it, he'd order a month's supply at a time. Every game in the cafes was licensed by Chen Cheng. Tencent's racing game and Cine's Legend were running the show, though some diehards stuck to single player. It's time Cine developed another game, Chen Cheng said. He motioned for the two to follow him to the bathhouse. He wanted to see the setup firsthand. Honestly, since opening, he hadn't actually tried the place himself. The first floor held the changing rooms and showers. The second floor was a steam sauna and entertainment hall. Top grade everything. He had to admit the investment was paying off. Check out the zoning. No customer conflicts, and the numbers are crazy. Their hand tags had already hit triple digits. Another success. We need to upgrade, add shower heads, expand the assisted bathing area. People shouldn't be waiting that long for a scrub. Chen Cheng's smile was faint. Bump the scrubbers from 5 to 10. Base pay plus a 5 yuan commission per customer. Huatianchi's jaw dropped. Damn, Chen, you trying to go bankrupt? I've never seen a business owner operate like this. At that rate, each scrubber pulls in more than an office manager. If you want employees to buy into the company culture, you make it worth their effort. They're doing physical labor, you pay them what they deserve. Yunzhou's growth wasn't limited to internet cafes or bathhouses. Their karaoke rooms were jammed too. We're planning a new branch, and not in Yunzhou, Yang Shalong said. The market here was saturated. Their 5 locations had prime spots, and from afternoon until dawn, not a single room sat empty. But not everyone can afford those prices. Launch a budget, volume-based karaoke for lower income brackets. By volume-based, he meant zero minimum spend, pay only for the time you sing, and drinks at a fraction of the cost of the regular joints. It would pull in the crowd that couldn't get a reservation at their main venues. Sounds like a good way to stimulate spending, but will it actually work? Huatianchi's forehead creased. If budget karaoke floods the city, it could cannibalize our other spots. This whole thing could blow up in our faces. No, I don't think so. Want to test that? After an hour walking through the singing rooms, Wang Ping'an had found the real problem. The music library was ancient. Current hits were missing. The catalog leaned hard on 80s and 90s tracks, fine for middle-aged customers, but young people were the real market now. They needed a system that actually spoke to them. Businessmen follow trends too. If anything, their thinking runs even further ahead. Wang Ping'an pulled out his phone and called Elizabeth. He needed her overseas R&D team to build custom karaoke software, something that would roll out across every venue he owned. I understand, Elizabeth said. You want a singing system that replaces the old music library, right? That summed it up. Online or offline, as long as the power was on, the server would automatically analyze and upload every track. No buffering, true seamless streaming. It would change the game. I'm giving your overseas team 1 week, that should do it. A week was all Wang Ping'an would tolerate any longer, and it would start costing him. It should be enough. I'll push hard. One more thing before they hung up. Wang Ping'an wanted the system loaded with as much popular Latin and Japanese music as possible. Those genres had serious traction, and they'd pull in young spenders a whole lot faster than middle-aged nostalgia. No problem. Once the system's ready, the music library is the easy part. Elizabeth laughed, promised, and sent the plan to headquarters. A singing system like this had been talked about for years. Nobody wanted to sink money into developing it, but Wang Ping'an was willing because his own stores needed it, and later, he could license it to every other singing room in the country. Everyone would end up paying him royalties. I figure we just roll with whatever comes. No point sweating the small stuff, Feng Yang said. Right now, we need to expand our liquor supply. Jones's prices are way too high. If you can find cheaper sources, drop Jones, but the key is authenticity. Wang Ping'an wasn't like shady operators who sold counterfeit liquor. That kind of profit was tempting, but it destroyed your reputation. A lawsuit could hit hard. When you were at the top, details mattered. If he weren't the joint chairman of so many companies, he'd probably use every ruthless trick to rake in cash. After all these years in business, if he didn't have a few ways to stay out of trouble, he'd have wasted his entire career. Got it, bro. Our reputation is everything. Li Changyu nodded quickly. He knew how sensitive Wang Ping'an was about this. If Feng Yang had ever suggested going with fake booze, Wang Ping'an would have given them both a look they'd never forget. Setting aside their current investments, Wang Ping'an told them to keep an eye out for prime locations. As soon as a good spot opened up, by it. He was planning something big for the second half of the year. It wasn't just about making money, it was about making waves. That evening, they grabbed dinner. At a random home-style restaurant. Wang Ping'an had come to Yunju alone, so no assistants were tagging along. The three of them didn't eat much, but they drank freely. Did you hear? Old Jiang is about to make his move. Who told you that? After lying low this long, he can't stand it anymore. A man at a nearby table laughed. He didn't buy it at all. Don't question my source. I heard old Jiang raised a ton of capital. Is ready to go to war with that flashy Feng Yang. Feng Yang alone isn't enough. What about Li Changyu? You think they're both idiots? The middle-aged speaker sneered. The plan sounded half-baked. That's not how it works. Wang Ping'an isn't around right now. That's the perfect opening. If Wang Ping'an were here, old Jiang wouldn't dare lift a finger. They kept talking loudly, not realizing the people in the next room were the subject of their gossip. Wang Ping'an was the first to laugh. See that? Nobody's got faith in you too. Should we teach old Jiang a lesson? Hell yes. He wants a money fight. We'll give him one. Feng Yang had more than just these businesses, he had his family behind him. The entire Feng clan was at its peak. He wasn't about to be intimidated by old Jiang. Sure, the guy was a super rich big shot in Yunju, but that didn't mean he could disrespect them. Feng's right. I'm no coward either. Li Changyu said, whatever industry he attacks us in, whatever tactics he uses, I'll make him taste what real pain feels like. Their reactions were exactly what Wang Ping'an had expected, that he didn't add anything. None of it mattered much anymore. That night, old Jiang launched his campaign that he had money to burn, and his strategy was simple: start a business war with Feng Yang. With that edge, he'd come out looking even more glorious. He seized several prime storefronts in busy districts and converted them into singing rooms, but his pricing was through the roof. They serve the masses. I'll serve the elite. I'll make every customer who walks through my doors feel like the most important person in Yunju. Old Jiang didn't want a handful of low-spending customers. 100 of them were worth less than one real boss. Some people dropped 10 grand in a night at a club. Others spent $50. The gap was huge, and the weight fell on the big spenders. I've got foresight. Want to party? First, buy a membership card. Minimum $10,000. Old Jiang added that hard rule. His venues were exclusive nightclubs with high barriers to entry. You're the boss, old Jiang. Why didn't I think of that? His assistant chuckled, showering him with praise. It's nothing. Keep the stores running well, and I'll make sure you're the manager of all of them. Old Jiang gave a meaningful look and walked out. There was nothing left to second guess. Everything was in place, just waiting for the wind to blow. But on opening day, only a few old-school Yunju businessmen showed up in person. The rest sent flower baskets and stayed home. After all, a $10,000 entry fee wasn't something everyone wanted to pay, and Wang Ping'an's era had arrived. Nobody was eager to waste breath on old Jiang. A private karaoke lounge like that? What's the point? It's a joke. Hu Tianqi could barely hold back his laugh. He knew exactly how many people had shown up to support the grand opening today. Uncle Chow had basically shot himself in the foot. It was ridiculous. I just came from there, Yang Shalong said, his tone casual. That place has zero business. Every customer who walked in walked out frowning. All those flashy high-consumption gimmicks, that's a suicide move in any industry. Chen Cheng stayed silent, turning the thought over. First, Uncle Chow was a businessman. Getting to where he was now wasn't luck. The guy wasn't brainless. Everyone could see what was happening. There was no way Uncle Chow didn't see it too. That alone was worth noting. Second, the man was going all in on the high-end market. It had nothing to do with Chen Cheng's own customer base. Uncle Chow had already locked down the elite clientele of the entire karaoke scene. If ordinary people weren't interested, there would still be people who were, because that place was a status symbol. There were restaurants that charged tens of thousands for a single meal, and they still had customers. People still went. Same logic. If it exists, it's rational. Just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean you can pretend it isn't real. You can't judge it in a day or two. Give it a week. If after a week it was still the same ghost town, Chen Cheng could crush Uncle Chow without even upgrading his own equipment. But if Uncle Chow managed to drum up business, then Chen Cheng would go straight for the kill, send Uncle Chow home. Make him think long and hard about whether he was really cut out for business. Everything unfolded exactly as Chen Cheng predicted. Big bosses were willing to show up. They even wanted to close business deals there, not because the environment was anything spectacular, but because the high-entry bar flaunted their wealth. They'd rather drop tens of thousands for a good show than squeeze into Chen Cheng's karaoke lounge with the common crowd. Different circles. You can't force your way in. Senna's research moved fast. Every engineer and designer at Surrey was pulled into the project. It wasn't just because Chen Cheng had pushed hard. The president of Surrey had personally issued a directive to give Chen Cheng full support and respond to the mainland market's development. The Thunder sound system can now connect to every private room directly through the terminal, Senna said. Arriving in person to demonstrate the operation, he confirmed the equipment was ready to use it. It was just a monitor with touch controls. The whole process was idiot-proof. Anyone could figure it out. Let me put it this way, this function isn't even widely used overseas yet. Hardly anyone applies it to karaoke systems. Senna connected it to the room's TV screen, picture and sound synced instantly. Pretty good, right? You can adjust the volume and switch songs with this controller, and you can call the staff too. He grinned and pressed the service button. A waiter rushed in a moment later. One ice beer, thanks. Over the next while, they tested every function, making sure everything worked perfectly. To the end, Chen Cheng asked Senna to add lighting controls. Every room was designed like a kaleidoscope, different knobs controlled different light patterns. And if this karaoke system was fully developed, they wouldn't need to upgrade again later. Even future system updates would be fast. No problem. You're a shareholder. After all, the tech team already has someone on it. Senna sprawled lazily on the sofa and drained his beer in one gulp. From Yuntai City to Yunju wasn't far actually, it was pretty close. But he wasn't about to miss a chance to make Chen Cheng foot the bill. No matter what, he was getting a nice dinner out of him. Hey, did you hear? Chen Cheng is critically ill. Word just came out. Whoever can turn his company around gets to inherit it. Senna said the news had just leaked. Not many people knew yet. Chen Cheng could try his luck. Chen Cheng. People in the business world called him Shen Half City. His wealth alone was worth a whole city. The early wave of businessmen who went private all knew who Chen Cheng was. Even his business model was still relevant today, but 6 months ago, he was hospitalized. He'd been bedridden ever since. Old man Shen must be at his limit to come up with something like this. Shen Group is currently valued at 3 billion. Their physical assets cover the entire Mingtai city. Chen Cheng knew exactly how much his own financial power would grow if he got his hands on that company, so he decided to take a shot. And he'd make the move early. Let's go. We'll eat in Mingtai City instead. Chen Cheng waved for Senna to come with him. He also brought Hu Tianqi and Yang Shalong. Those two young guys needed to see the real world anyway, plus, it would throw Uncle Chow off their trail. After a week, they'd come back and see how Uncle Chow's business was doing. Mingtai City at night was just as bustling as Mingju. The city already had all the signs of a top-tier metropolis. Someone had even done an assessment. If Shen Half City had been able to split himself in two, he could have pushed Mingtai to the same level as the capital. That wasn't empty talk. Shen Half City was that strong. Here's how it works. You talk to the person in charge first, then put together a proposal. You get 1 day to prepare. Results need to be delivered by the next day. Of course, it wasn't just a handful of businessmen in the running. A lot of people wanted to inherit Shen Half City's empire. It was a competition. Whoever could prove their ability to Chen Cheng would win, and data was the only measure of ability. So with all these businessmen going head to head, the whole Mingtai City is a battlefield. You think Brother Chen has a shot? Hu Tianqi grinned, wanting to hear everyone's take. Of course he does. Haven't you noticed how calm he is? Yang Shalong tilted his chin toward Chen Cheng. The man looked completely unfazed. Anyone else might overthink it. Not Chen Cheng. He'd already claimed Shen Group as his own. He was just figuring out the best way to make money from it. Plugging all his own channels into it would generate massive profits. Shen Half City couldn't just care about one person's ability. Strength was a key criterion too. Having ability without strength wouldn't keep the company safe. It's like a drill. But this time, the drill is real. Our hypothetical enemy isn't these businessmen. It's the employees inside the group. That was exactly what Chen Cheng wanted. If taking Shen Bancheng away made the entire conglomerate start crumbling, then the rot inside was already bone deep. A few words wouldn't fix that. If they wanted to do this right, They'd have to start from the inside out. I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, but you don't have full decision-making authority. You can only conduct business operations through our company's channels, and you still only have 1 day to prepare and 1 day to execute. The liaison couldn't have made it any clearer. His so-called 2-day interim chairmanship boiled down to a single day of real power. Fine. But what happens when your people refuse to cooperate? Chen Cheng let out a cold snort. When things fell apart, nobody got to walk away clean. If they refuse, you have the right to enforce, pending approval from our management. Which meant nothing. You couldn't let one person's actions freeze an entire company's operations. Still, Chen Cheng went ahead and linked all the channels to the Chen Group anyway. The Chen Group's core was high-tech.to bridge that gap. He only had 2 options, his own Sena channels or foreign ones. Because Chen Cheng didn't own a single high-tech asset, this wasn't the internet industry. You couldn't just smash 2 completely unrelated things together and expect magic. Shouldn't we hold something back? We can't just hand everything to the Chen Group for free. Hua Tianqi couldn't stop himself from warning Chen Cheng if this went south, they'd be stuck breaking the contract just to get out of Mingtai City. Doesn't exist. If I'm taking the risk, I'm not afraid of the fallout, and there won't be any fallout. Chen Cheng's voice went hard. In business, if you second-guessed every move, you might as well not play at all. That was just the reality. He'd been chewing on this for a long time. It was a clean play. On the surface, he was doing it all for the Chen Group. But cooperation went both ways. He'd be able to dig into every corner of the industry. Even if he didn't get chosen in the end, he'd still walk away with the entire sector mapped out in his head. How many candidates do we have now? Old man Chen opened his eyes, voice thin and weak. Every day, he asked the same thing about his company. The news had been out for 3 days. Almost nobody had shown up. Funny thing. Just today, more than a dozen came through. A lot of them are chairmen or CEOs from major companies. The assistant let out a dry chuckle. With management tactics like theirs, it was going to be a toss-up. Don't say that. Those people know how to do business or run a company, but true all-rounders are rare. Old man Chen smiled bitterly. If someone like that existed, he wouldn't still be out here hunting for an heir. It was a slap in his own face. And it stung. Don't overthink it. Focus on your treatment. You'll recover soon. The assistant handed him the paper, still warm from the press. Everything from noon until now was in there. I've got my eye on this one. Old man Chen tapped a small section that covered Chen Cheng's actions. Walked into the Chen Group, signed an order immediately, then tied his own businesses into the mix in a single day. He'd mapped out every channel the Chen Group had. And right before his official takeover, he'd gathered all the cooperation partners from E Group. We're a high-tech company, sure, but we need this young man's thinking. Old man Chen smiled. After he was gone, the Chen Group would scatter. Having a young guy step up without demanding anything in return, that was already more than he'd dared to hope for. He might not be as perfect as you think. I'm not sold on Chen Cheng. Is already planning mass layoffs at the company today. The assistant filled him in quickly. It felt like Chen Cheng was getting too full of himself. He'd never seen anyone act so arrogant. How else is he supposed to treat you? When I was his age, I wouldn't have bothered to notify you at all. Old man Chen nodded, satisfied. He told his assistant to give Chen Cheng a green light on everything tomorrow. He wanted to see exactly what this young man was made of. But even without the green light, Chen Cheng had already figured out the entire group's operation. Besides old man Chen, the highest authority was the executive director. That executive director was different. She was a woman, and a tough one. Out of all the businessmen Chen Cheng had ever dealt with, she was the strongest woman he'd met. My name is Wang Yuan. I'm the executive director of the Chen Group. Her greeting was cold and official as she gestured for him to sit. After all, this reckless kid was the only one who'd come knocking. I know who you are, and I know you don't like people showing up uninvited, but I'm that reckless kid, so don't mind me. Chen Cheng's smile was faint. He could read her thoughts like an open book. Standard, nothing to show off. I don't mind, but your time is very limited, so don't get too cocky. Wang Yuan flicked her hand, impatient. Get on with it. I came to ask what overseas partnerships the Chen Group currently has, and what model you'd use if you wanted to expand abroad. The second he said it, Wang Yuan froze. She hadn't expected him to actually talk business. She cleared her throat and answered formally. Right now, our overseas collaborations are limited. We provide technology development, and the partners handle production on their own. Because the Chen Group was a tech R&D company, not a manufacturing or trading firm, that model might need a serious overhaul. You have the core tech, sure, but if someone copies or surpasses it one day, and you don't have your own production line, how do you operate? Chen Cheng's intentions sliced straight through. He cut right to the hidden threat the Chen Group was facing. IT wasn't something they could afford to ignore. Watch your words, so that's a very dangerous statement. Wang Yuan's face flushed crimson. Everything Chen Cheng had said was spot on, brutally accurate, and almost identical to what Shen Banqing himself had been thinking. Am I wrong? Any company that wants real growth doesn't show its hand. Now isn't the time to be a hero. Chen Cheng's smile was faint and cold. If Shen Corporation didn't pivot soon, they were headed for disaster. There was a process, and it was rigid. If old Shen died and the foreign partners refused to acknowledge a new chairman, every deal would grind to a halt, and no amount of talent could pull them out of that. How is that possible? It's all in writing. Publicly traded giants don't risk their reputations. Wang Yuan's voice pitched high with indignation. She thought Chen Cheng's reasoning was unhinged. Why not? Their contracts are with Shen Banqing, not with you or me. Who'd step up then? And even if someone did, what good would it do? Chen Cheng couldn't help a dry laugh. Did this woman really not understand something so fundamental? He'd been clear enough. He wasn't about to drag it out, so he called her out, forcing her to show her real position. What exactly are you getting at? Wang Yuan's eyes blazed. The words hit a nerve. Simple. If you could handle it, I wouldn't be here. His tone dripped with mockery. If the executive director kept playing dead, he'd walk away from the entire mess. Fine. Let me be direct. Management did consider everything you're saying, but we don't have the capability right now. Wang Yuan admitted it. The ideas mirrored Shen Banqing's. They had no foundry of their own. Their entire business was buy low, sell high. That model had run 5 years. Low-end and mid-range chips sold well. High-end chips had only moved once or twice. The impact was minimal. You're wrong. Chen Cheng snorted. They've already got chips that outclass yours, your low to mid-range products. They're just a cost cutter for their least demanding accounts. He snatched a phone from the table, slammed it to the floor, and pried it apart right in front of her. Before Wang Yuan could shout, he'd pulled out the whole motherboard. Look at this. High-end or low-end? Her legs caved and she sank into her chair. She'd never even considered the possibility. That can't be. Her voice faded. She'd supplied mid-range chips for that exact model. You need more proof. They take your mid-grade chips, mark them up overseas, and keep the real high-end cores for their own industry. You're getting played, and you're helping them count the cash. Chen Cheng's voice rose with frustration. Then he said flat out that if he were calling the shots, she'd be the first person fired. Wang Yuan sat frozen, mute, until her assistant stepped in to smooth the moment over. You two, follow me. Downstairs, the car headed straight for the hospital. Chen Cheng knew this was Shen Bansheng calling him in. Barring surprises, the matter was basically sealed. Wang Yuan looked hollowed out, like she'd lost her voice. Old Shen is inside. I'll wait here. The assistant offered a thin, polite smile and gestured Chen Cheng forward. So you're Chen Cheng, good. I haven't come across a talent like you in years. Old Shen looked alert, his voice carrying noticeable weight. You must be Mr. Shen. If I'm not mistaken, you've already done your homework on me. Chen Cheng smiled easily and took a seat on the edge of the bed. Truth is, I heard everything you said. These past few years, we couldn't reclaim our core tech, and we couldn't halt supply. Shen Bansheng explained that the foreign core company had been orchestrating the trouble behind the scenes. You shouldn't have shown your cards from the beginning. If it were me, I'd have a few alternatives. Good, then Wang Yuan will assist you. You solve this mess, and Shen Corporation is yours. Shen Bansheng didn't waste time. Time is tight. Starting now, you're my proxy, the acting chairman of Shen Corporation. You'll have the authority, but the formal paperwork comes after the problem is fixed. And if I don't solve it? Chen Cheng let out a short laugh. Was the man really about to hand him a chairman title for nothing? If you don't solve it, I doubt you could lead your own company to victory either. Because you're Chen Cheng, you don't lose. Old Shen laughed, a full, deep sound. He waved a hand, said he needed rest, and told Wang Yuan to keep Chen Cheng company for the next couple of days. Understood. Chen Cheng stepped out respectfully. He saw Wang Yuan still standing there with a dazed expression and took her arm. What's going on in your head? Nothing, nothing. She fumbled for words. Then don't dwell on it. It's not your fault, just focus on the work ahead. He climbed into the car and told her he was hungry, that he wanted to eat first. He hadn't explored Mingtai City much, but one guess had been right. The tech sector here was on the cutting edge, like a small Silicon Valley pulsing with innovation and talent. Chen Cheng, who are you really? What did you do to make Old Shen trust you this much? Wang Yuan was baffled. To her, he looked absolutely ordinary. How did he have this kind of ability? No clue. Maybe I'm just too handsome. Don't get attached, I'm a married man. He grinned, trying to lighten the air. They grabbed a quick meal in Mingtai City. Even for something fast, they pulled out all the stops. Old Shen said to give you top treatment. Even if this turns out to be your last meal with Shen Corporation, it should be a fitting one. The old man was something else. Chen Cheng gave a wry smile and nodded. Why was Shen Bansheng so certain he couldn't fail? The core problem wasn't really that complicated, at least in his eyes. R&D and data each played a role, but the real key was capital. And they already had a solid foundation to work from. Wang Yuan's voice was steady. The immediate application for our core is phones. If the core is powerful enough, it can run more programs, not just what these basic brick phones can handle. She worked in high tech. She knew exactly where the industry was headed. Overseas, smartphone prototypes already existed. They were game changers, but they weren't on the market yet, kept under wraps even abroad. Chen Cheng didn't hesitate. A chip like this is already enough for current touchscreen phones. They needed to move fast. If they dragged their feet, someone else would beat them to it. The entire foreign market was watching. Every move they made was transparent. Got it. I'll contact R&D right now. Wang Yuan dialed the tech department. Within minutes, several managers rushed over. This is President Chen. You've all met him, right? She cut straight to the point. She laid out the plan. They were going into the phone business, not just the core, but full vertical integration from production to assembly. One manager frowned. But President Wang, jumping into the phone market now is risky. We'll get crushed. The top brands had already cornered the market. Even the new touchscreen models were out of reach for most people. Those aren't problems. We have the best resources, trust me. Wang Yuan gave a wry smile. She knew her promises sounded hollow. To really open up the market, she'd have to show her team the potential for success. Another manager straightened. Then we're all in. No hesitation. The Chen Group was built for high-tech R&D. They had resources to spare and a network of suppliers who could provide anything as long as the money was right. That saved Chen Cheng from having to hunt down channels. They didn't have much time to waste. Wang Yuan shifted topics. If we're producing all touchscreen models, the screens themselves are going to be a major cost. She had no screen supplier lined up, so she passed the problem to Chen Cheng. I'll handle it. You guys sort out everything else. Chen Cheng smiled faintly. Problems that could be solved weren't really problems. The market had plenty of people ready to supply what he needed. The key was finding a screen that was both affordable and durable. Smith leaned in. Right now we have two screen specs. Point one is high definition, the other full color. The two were fundamentally different. So one has high brightness but poor color, and the other has rich color but breaks easily. Smith nodded. That was the gist. With that distinction, the choice was obvious. Go for rich colored. If they ever went full screen, they could use OLED, but they weren't there yet. A single screen could cost more than the phone itself. I'll set you up with the second typed and Y quote is $30 per unit. Smith claimed these were the best on the market, great color saturation and 3 times the durability of comparable screens. Deal. I need 10,000 units. I'll pay when they arrive. Chen Cheng wasn't about to hand over cash upfront. The Chen Group had to sign off on it. Besides, Smith might try to screw him later. Getting the guy to honor a warranty was next to impossible. Fine. I'll call you when the shipment lands. Smith smiled and left the tea house, satisfied. Another order from Chen Cheng meant he could justify a price hike on his end. The actual cost of the screens wasn't that high. Smith had padded the price. Chen Cheng didn't mind. Nobody helped you for free. If they had their own factory, they wouldn't have to worry about it. 30,000 isn't bad. Our assembly costs are low, Wang Yuan said, and she transferred the payment. One more thing, make sure the phone casing uses as much aluminum alloy as possible. He didn't explain why. People dropped their phones all the time. Plastic was already on its way out. Durability was a must. Not everyone could afford to upgrade every few months. Thanks for your hard work. After a short stop at the Chen Group, Chen Cheng took a cab to the hotel. How's the market research going? The sales team had arrived that evening and had been working around the hotel. Wang Khan looked up from his notes. We've got it all mapped out. Mingtai City's economy runs on high tech, and there are gaps we can fill. Unlike other cities, Mingtai's market was heavily influenced by food prices. Food costs through the roof here. In other words, the cost of living was sky high, not by a little. By a lot. That meant opportunity. Chen Cheng told them to connect with every distributor willing to work at wholesale pricing. The next expansion target was the auto industry. Mingtai had high average income but very few car owners. With 4-lane roads, the city felt almost empty. Wang Khan stared. So we're going to stimulate consumption. Launch the first car right here in Mingtai? He hadn't expected Chen Cheng to move so fast. Of course Deno City suits us better than Mingtai. I'm going to hire a celebrity for endorsements in the next couple of days. Chen Cheng had the cash. A celebrity appearance cost a few $100,000. Endorsement deals ran in the millions. With star power, they could drive sales fast. And anyone who knew their specs would buy without hesitation. Find a location. We're opening a flagship dealership. Everything was falling into place. Chen Cheng had no other demands. He wanted to cash in on every investment and crash the market. Once, twice, 3 times. Sooner or later, he'd break through. When that happened, his company would skyrocket. Whether cars or phones, they'd become synonymous with high-tech innovation. Chen Cheng had his software preloaded straight into the phone's internal memory. The stock app already displayed real-time market trends without any registration. Once users signed up, they could link their investment accounts, a huge convenience for traders with hardware that matched mainstream specs. The device ticked every box. This is solid. I don't see any issues. Zhu Kaiyang's voice practically glowed as he turned the prototype over in his hands. Phones this professional don't come around often. The weight felt solid, reassuring. He dropped it into a glass of water to test it. 30 seconds later, it was still working perfectly. Hell of a rugged phone. Chen Cheng laughed, surprised even himself. I didn't even plan for that. He gave Wang Yuan the green light for mass production. Every unit would have a removable battery for portability. No problem. If you're happy, our tech team won't have any objections. Wang Yuan smiled, clearly satisfied. The first-generation rugged phone launched fast, but buyers stayed skeptical. They trusted the old brand's one flashy new device wasn't going to change their minds overnight. Then the user base started to grow, and people realized this was the future. The touchscreen alone made it a joy to use. The feel, the responsiveness, nothing else came close. Zhu Kaiyang grinned. This phone, no joke, it's a status symbol for the wealthy. At $1,000 each, not everyone could afford it, but every phone was identical, same specs, same model, same color. Wang Yuan had suggested offering variations, but Chen Cheng shot the idea down. We're selling out every batch. Distribution to other cities is ramping up. Shouldn't we offer different colors, different styles? Wang Yuan pressed, her designer instincts kicking in. No, these phones are just a transition. If we want to beat the overseas competition, we need to be ready for the real revolution. Chen Cheng explained that time was short. They had to figure out how to make the phone fully sealed, a single sheet of glass covering the entire front. That meant the motherboard and core components had to be top-tier. Battery life alone would determine whether the UI could run without stuttering. Do we really need all these features? Wang Yuan laughed, shaking her head at his demands. What, you think we don't? Without this, we'll never lead the next era of phones. He laid it out simply, luxury cars versus regular ones. The market exists because of demand. Why do rich people buy fully loaded sedans while others settle for base models? Why are last century's cars already facing forced retirement? Why are modern cars designed so differently? That was the answer. They had to understand the why before they could innovate. So you're saying the future will be driven by phones? Wang Yuan's eyebrows shot up. Computers were still king, and they were barely past the early adopter phase. Getting everyone to upgrade was nearly impossible. We don't need to worry about all that. Tell the tech team to focus on the next generation, a smartphone with an edge-to-edge screen. Chen Cheng added that the algorithms would need a complete overhaul. A new core, connected to the motherboard, could create a framework, and building a native ecosystem around that framework was critical. Your vision is too big, Wang Yuan said. This guy might be more your speed. She meant He Mingfeng, the chairman of Nokia. He was a flat-out madman, obsessed with tech to the point of insanity. He had zero interest in business. Last year in Binju, we heard him speak at a conference. He said phones would eventually be driven by a smart system, just like a computer OS. Wang Yuan's voice turned thoughtful. He claimed that system could handle far more complex algorithms and keep the whole structure running smoothly. That's exactly it. Chen Cheng was already sold. He needed to meet this guy. If the timing was right, The smartphone era could arrive early, and then nobody else would stand a chance. Your company should have his contact info. Get him on the phone. Tell him Chen Cheng wants to meet. By now, Chen Cheng's name carried serious weight. Everyone in the industry knew him, and the touchscreen launch had scared the hell out of the competition. He said yes. Honestly, Chen Cheng, sometimes I wonder who you really are. Wang Yuan smiled as she relayed the news, then she added, this is the first time He Mingfeng has agreed to see a client. Chen Cheng shrugged. Clients are clients, partners are partners. He laughed and climbed into Wang Yuan's car. She drove straight to the airport. Their destination wasn't Mingtai, they boarded an international flight. We're going to Latin America. Chen Cheng stared out the window, stunned. He would have prepared if he'd known they were leaving the country. He should have brought old Ju and the team. The market down here was nothing like home. Disappointed. Let me tell you, this opportunity is rare. We've got 3 hours, and that's only because He Mingfeng made room between meetings. Wang Yuan's tone was cool. She slipped in her earbuds and ignored him for the rest of the flight.